Tessa.
How's it going there, folks? Welcome to what is sure to be another fun at-home table read. Tonight we're doing something a little different. I wrote or I adapted one of my favorite books. That's what we're doing tonight. The book is Rant, an oral biography of Buster Casey by Chuck Palahniuk, the author of Fight Club. I've loved this book for years. I've always wanted to see it as a movie. And unfortunately, right now James Franco owns the movie rights, so I'm beating him to it. But let us jump right in to introducing ourselves here.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I will be reading Action Description and Karl Waxman.
I'm Eric. I'll be Shot Dunyan.
I'm Angie, and I am Echo Lawrence.
Hello, I'm George, and I'll be Green Taylor Sims.
I'm Logan. I'm going to be Rant Casey.
I'm Chelsea. I will be Bodie Carlyle.
Hi, I'm Anne, and I'll be Irene Casey.
Hi, I'm Tessa, and I'll be Tina something.
Hello there. I'm Travis. I'm playing Nettie Nelson.
All right, well, Kevin, take us away.
Rant, the Tale of Buster Casey, written by Logan Horberg. Adapted from Rant, an oral biography of Buster Casey by Chuck Palahniuk. Do you ever wish you'd never been born? Interior, interview room, various, day and night. An empty table sits in front of a camera. The door behind the table opens and people enter in a series of cuts. Echo Lawrence, one of her arms is shriveled and curled into her chest. Shot Dunyan, loving every minute of this. Jarrell Moore takes off his jacket, revealing a gun holster. Irene Casey, a beautiful even in her older age. Bodie Carlyle, looking very out of his element and overwhelmed. Green Taylor Sims, adjusting his small glasses and taking a calm seat at the table. Lynn Coffey enters holding a large case file. Reverend Curtis Dean Fields, looking every inch the old town preacher. Wallace Boyer, dressed in a flashy suit. He sits down and looks at the camera.
Whenever you're ready.
Boyer nods and inhales. Interior, airplane, day. Boyer sits in his seat on a plane. He's minding his own business, reading a magazine.
Like most people, I didn't meet or talk to Rant Casey until after he was dead. That's how it works with most celebrities. After they croak, their circle of close friends just explodes. Dead celebrity can't walk down the street without meeting a million of his best buddies he never met in real life.
Wallace looks up and sees Chet Casey, a scary-looking hillbilly coming towards him, with eyes on the aisle seat next to him.
The way Rant Casey used to say it, folks build a reputation by attacking you while you are alive, or praising you after you ain't.
Chet takes the seat and gets comfortable. His skin is covered with scars, indicators of a life fully lived. Interior, airplane, in flight. The flight attendant walks up to the pair.
And what would you like to drink?
The flight attendant pulls out a scotch on the rocks and hands it to Chet.
Could you pass this to the gentleman?
Chet takes one of his large hands and takes the glass, passing it across to Wallace.
Those monster fingers wrapped around the plastic cup. Chewed up knuckles. I could never touch my lips to the rim. With the epidemic, a person can't be too careful.
Wallace takes the glass and sets it on his tray table. He locks eyes with Chet for just a moment. Chet stares back with bright green eyes. Interior, airplane. An hour later, the men sit together, sharing an armrest. The awkwardness is palpable. The scotch still sits on Wallace's tray, more and more watered down by the minute.
So how much did your plane ticket set you back?
Chet picks up his own scotch and takes a sip.
$50.
What? I wanted to ask, how do you live with those scary chewed up hands? Instead, I asked, for one way?
Round trip. Called a bereavement fare.
Possible. Not even standby tickets go that cheap. How'd you get such a deal?
Chet takes another sip of scotch.
First, what you have to do is escape from inside a locked insane asylum. Then you have to hitchhike cross country wearing nothing but plastic booties and a paper getup that won't stay shut in the back. Need to arrive a heartbeat too late to keep a repeat child molester from raping your wife and your mother. Spawned out of that rape, you have to raise a son who collects a wagon full of folks' old thrown out teeth. After high school, your wacko kid's got to run off, join some cult that lives only at night, wreck his car 100 times, and hook up with some kind of sort of not really prostitute. Along the way, your kid's got to spark a plague that'll kill thousands of people, although enough folks so that it leads to martial law and threatens to topple world leaders. And lastly, the boy got to die in a big, flaming, fiery inferno, watched by everyone in the world with a television set.
Wallace is speechless. Chet finishes his drink.
Simple as that. Then when you go to collect the body for the funeral, the airline gives you a special bargain price for your ticket. $50, round trip.
Chet looks at the scotch on Wallace's tray.
You gonna drink that?
Go ahead. This is how fast your life can turn around. How the future you have tomorrow won't be the same future you had yesterday.
Wallace just stares at the man.
My dilemma is, ask for his autograph?
Wallace leans in slightly.
Are you related to that guy, Rant Casey? Werewolf Casey is the worst patient zero in the history of the disease. The super spreader who's infected half the country. America's kissing killer, Rant Mad Dog Casey.
Buster. My boy's given name was Buster Landrew Casey. Not Rant, not Buddy. Buster.
Wallace's eyes are trailing over Chet, trying to memorize every detail.
I'll be bragging about this stranger for the rest of my life.
Wallace leans in closer.
You're
Chester. Chester Casey.
holy hell. Sitting right next to me, Chester Casey, the father of Rant Casey, America's walking, talking biological weapon of mass destruction. Andy Warhol was wrong. In the future, people won't be famous for 15 minutes. In the future, everyone will sit next to someone famous for at least 15 minutes. Typhoid Mary, Ted Bundy, or Sharon Tate. History is nothing except monsters or villains, or witnesses.
After a long beat,
I'm sorry. Tough break about your kid dying.
Chet sighs and shakes his head before tossing back the remainder of Wallace's scotch.
Well, you look at it, it's still a damn sweet deal on an airplane ticket.
Exterior, Middleton night. A car drives through the dark, small town roads.
Hound dog is to Middleton what the cow is to the streets of Calcutta or New Delhi. In the middle of every dirt road sleeps some kind of mongrel coonhound panting in the sun, a kind of fur-covered speed bump with no collar or tags. To arrive at Middleton requires 4 solid days of driving, which is the longest period of time I have ever experienced inside an automobile without colliding with another vehicle. I found that to be the most depressing aspect of my pilgrimages.
Interior, car, continuous. 3 people sit in the car in silence. Echo Lawrence, Shot Dunyan, and Nettie Nelson.
Driving to Middleton, rolling across all that fucking country in the middle of the night. Shot scanning the radio for traffic reports to hear any action we're missing out on. Morning or evening drive time bulletins from oceans away. Gridlock and traffic backups where it's still yesterday. Fatal pileups and jackknives on expressways where it's already tomorrow. It's fucking weird hearing somebody died tomorrow. Like you could still call that commuter man right now in Moscow and stay home.
Shot finds the station he's looking for, and a voice from the radio chirps.
Expect a gaper's delay if you're eastbound on the Meadows bypass through the Richmond area. Slow down and stretch your neck for a good long look at 2 fatal car accident in the leftmost lane. The driver of the first call was searching for a 24-year-old blonde female with a textbook fracture / dislocation of her spine and at the Atlantic occipital joint and a complete transection of the spinal cord. Fancy words for whiplash, so bad it snaps your neck. The other driver was a 26-year-old male with nothing special, transverse fracture of the sternum, bilateral rib fractures, and his lungs impaled by the fractured ribs, all due to the impact with the steering wheel. So buckle up and slow down. Reporting for graphic traffic, this is Tina something.
We broke curfew and the government quarantine. We drove across these stretches of nothing. Shot driving. Nettie in the back seat, reading some book and telling us how Jack the Ripper never died.
He just traveled back in time to slaughter his mom to make himself immortal, and now he's the US president or the Pope. And have you ever heard the one about how UFOs are really human tourists visiting from the distant future?
I guess we drove out to Middleton to see all the places Rand had talked about and meet his people. His parents, Irene and Chester, his best friend, Bodie Carlyle, all the dipshit farm families he used to go on and on talking about. Most of party crashing was just us driving in cars talking. Our goal was to flesh out the stories Rant had told. Me and Echo with Nettie in the back. Well, in the car, Rant bought for him. Yeah, and we went to put the flowers and stuff on Rant's grave.
Shot turns off the radio.
No, we're missing a good soccer mom night.
Not tonight. Check your calendar. Tonight was a student driver night.
The beautiful full moon in the sky. We're actually missing a great honeymoon tonight. Honeymoon night.
Police lights flare up behind them. Shot pulls over and they wait as Sheriff Carlyle walks up to the window, flashlight blinding.
What are you folks doing out here this evening?
We're making a pilgrimage to see where Rand Casey was been born.
Driver's licenses?
They'll pull out their licenses and hand them over. Sheriff Carlyle looks them over.
The city's a horrifying place. Rand had been killed by moving to the city. City people were all murderers, meaning y'all.
Shot looks up at him.
Has anybody been by to murder Rand's moms yet?
Sheriff Carlyle eyes Shots intensely.
Talk about the worst question Shot could have asked.
Exterior, Middleton, night. The car drives.
You can tell me how in 1844 did the physicist Sir David Brewster discover a metal nail fully embedded in a block of Denovian sandstone more than 300 million years old. Or in the fact that an Illinois housewife broke open a lump of coal and found a gold necklace embedded inside it.
Who cares?
They drive down the main street, seeing people leaving bar for the night.
Despite the dreary scenery of small towns like these, it's all very sexual. It's only the individual who attains an early beauty and sexuality who become trapped here. Young men and women who acquire perfect breasts and muscles before they know how to use that power, they end up pregnant and mired so close to home. These cycles concentrate the best genetics in places you'd never expect, like Middleton. Little nests of wildly attractive idiots who give birth and survive into a long, ugly adulthood. Venuses and Apollos. If Middleton has produced one remarkable product in the tedious, dull, dusty history of this community, that extraordinary product was Rant Casey.
They watch these people pairing off, ready to hook up.
Remember how Rant used to say,
Big reason why folks leave a small town is so they can moon over the idea of going back. And the reason they stay put is so they can moon over getting out.
Rant meant that no one is happy anywhere. He also used to say,
Life's greatest comfort is being able to look over your shoulder and see people worse off waiting in line behind you.
Before party crashing nights, when our team would go out to dinner, Greentail or Sims would watch and sneer while Rant ate every food with the same fork. Rant wasn't a dumb shit. He just never got past using a plastic spoon. Behind Rant's back, Green used to call him Huckleberry Fairy.
Mr. Dunning refers to Rant as the Tooth Fairy.
Exterior, Middleton, midnight. The Cadillac pull up outside of an old farmhouse, next to a mailbox with Casey painted onto it. In the back seat, Nettie sleeps quietly and Shot fiddles with the radio.
Just a heads up, watch out for the two-car fender bender along the right shoulder, westbound at milepost 67 and the city center throughway. Both vehicles appear to be wedding parties, complete with tin cans tied to the rear bumpers. Traffic is slow as drivers rubberneck to watch the brides and grooms scream and throw wedding cake at each other. Be on the lookout for bridesmaids and white rice in the roadway.
We sat there for hours, waiting for a sign Irene Casey was still alive, and no mysterious stranger had strangled or stabbed her to death yet.
Exterior, Middleton Cemetery, night. Echo and Shot walk through the graveyard.
We never could find Rant's grave. How weird is that? We did find his friend's name in the phone book and found his trailer. We didn't even knock on his trailer door.
Forget it. I never did see Irene Casey. We couldn't bring ourselves to knock. For all we knew, she was already dead inside that farmhouse.
Exterior, Middleton, dawn. The Cadillac is pulled over again, and the same sheriff stands at their window.
You are all in violation of the Federal Emergency Health Powers Act and the ICU curfew.
We didn't want to leave Mrs. Casey unprotected.
Sheriff Carlyle pulls his gun on them.
How about you all come into town for some questioning?
In Middleton, sleeping dogs have the permanent right of way.
Wintertime, Middleton dogs run in packs.
Exterior, Middleton day. A pack of wild dogs run through the street.
Regular farm dogs hereabouts. They'll tear off and disappear, except you can hear them howling and barking at night. Other dogs, people car dump them on the side of the road. City folks figure any dog can fend for itself, turn wild, but most mutts will starve until they're hungry enough to eat the shit left behind by some other varmint. The shit's crawling with fly eggs. Most of those let-go dogs die of worms. Other dogs, they pack together to stay warm. The dogs that survive, the pack runs down rabbits and mule deer.
A dog's ear perks up at the sound of howling, and it starts to get restless.
A pet dog hears that howl, that hungry howl, and no matter how much you call, even the nicest dog forgets his name. Snow starts to fall on your pet dog. Your best friend is nothing but the wolf man. Sound of a far-off howling in the dark. Sound carries forever when the air turns cold.
This dog jumps the fence and goes running off into the night, barking and howling.
The idea those dogs, maybe even your own dogs, would go crazy and hunt you. Your own dogs might track you home after school, trail you through the brush alongside the road, stalk you. Your own dog would bite you down and yank you apart, bite by bite. No matter how much you might call out, Fido, or tell him stay, tell him sit. The dog you house trained from a pup, spanked with a newspaper, that dog will snap his teeth together on your windpipe and rip out your throat. Fido would howl over your dying body and drink your blood till pumping hot out of your own loving heart.
Interior, interview room, day.
Don't ask me to feel sorry for him. Even in grade school, Rant Casey was begging to get killed in this terrible way. Snakes or rabies.
Interior, interview, day.
Oh, I was the Casey's neighbor, if you'd care to know. The three of them, Casey's called each other by different names. Irene called her husband Chet. He called her Reen, short for Irene, but only to her face. Nobody else called Irene that. Rant called Chester Dad. Irene called her son Buddy, but his father called him Buster, never Rant. Only Bodie Carlyle called him Rant. History is, Rant called Bodie Toad. No lie.
Interior, the Casey house, day. The Casey family sits around the dinner table.
Everyone gave a different name to everyone else. Buster was Rant to Buddy. Chester was Chet, was Dad. Irene was Mom, was Reen. How folks lay claim to a loved one is how they give you a name of their own. They figure to label you as their own property.
Same as dumping a dog. The worst thing a man can do is turn himself loose.
Interior, car, day. Echo sits with Shot and Nettie.
Rant used to tell people.
So you're a different human being to everyone you meet.
Or sometimes he'd say.
You only ever is in the eyes of other folks.
Although, if you were going to carve a quote onto his grave, his favorite saying was,
Future you have tomorrow won't be the same future you had yesterday.
Bullshit. Rant's favorite saying was,
Some people are just born human. The rest of us take a lifetime to get there.
I remember Rant used to say,
We won't ever be as young as we is tonight.
Interior, church, Sunday morning. Irene sits in the pews of the church as the service is underway. She seems at peace, only checking her watch occasionally.
Used to be Buddy walked with his grandma Esther to church on Sundays. Little Buddy made a habit seeing how she didn't have nobody to walk with him. An old lady in her little church hat and a little boy wearing a clip-on bow tie, holding hands and walking along the dirt road. They made a picture to touch your heart.
Irene looks at her watch again.
But one Sunday, through the opening hymn and through the first gospel reading and halfway intro into the sermon, but Buddy and Esther still ain't arrived at the church.
The collection basket is passed around, and in that moment, the doors to the church burst open and slam into the walls. All heads turn to the door. Rant stumbles inside, panting hard. He rests his hands on his knees, catching his breath, his shirt untucked and his bow tie gone.
Would you kindly close the door?
Bit.
He takes another labored breath.
Grandma Esther, she's sick. Bad.
Don't hate me for saying, but no, Casey never paid to fix that hole. Rant punched with the doorknob in the church wall, even accepting it he done it by accident.
Buddy says a spider done bit Esther. From the look of it, Black Widow spider.
Exterior, Middleton streets, day. Rant and Esther walk down the dirt road. After a beat or two, Esther stops and drops his hands.
Lord.
She suddenly rips her hat off her head and throws it to the ground. She stomps at the hat for a moment, her gray hair pulled free and dangling in front of her face. Rant takes a small steps toward it, but Esther raises a hand.
Don't you touch it.
Thick chunks of her hair are still attached to the hat. Esther steps in cautiously and toe kicks the hat over, and the two of them crouch to take a look. Mixed in the dust and gravel, the mashed up veil, the crumpled satin, sits a spider. A dusty black spider with a red hourglass on its belly.
Cousins to the shoe-button spider of South Africa, the black widow nests in isolated places such as unused clothing or outdoor latrines. Until indoor plumbing became prevalent, bites from black widows were commonly inflicted on the buttocks and genitals of the victims. More recently, the spider is more likely to bite when trapped between clothing and the victim's skin, like when a spider nests in a seldom worn shoe or glove.
Esther reaches up and touches her head, searching. After a moment, she finds a spot that brings tears to her eyes. She clicks open her purse and fishes out a tissue. She pushes it onto the spot, and when she pulls it back, the tissue is decorated with a red spot of fresh blood.
Fast as you can. Run and get your paw.
She lowers herself to one knee, then sits on the road.
Boy, be fast. Rant says his granny told him, run fast, but if you ain't fast enough, remember, I still love you.
Kill me if I'm lying because I ain't, but Middleton dogs turn wilder when the wind blows too hard. A real gust of wind and all the trash cans go over. Dogs love that. Any female trash, you have to wrap it in newspaper and bury it, special deep in the garbage. So when the wind comes through and takes your can with it, depending on the household, you have dirty Kotex flapping everywhere. Every trash can that blows over, every army of throw-away blood gets bigger, marching in the direction of the wind until they come to a fence or a cactus.
Rant looks around and fear fills his eyes.
Close by, Rant, he could hear the dog Pax barking and snapping. He didn't want to leave his grandma, but she told him to get going.
If you ask me, the worst part was keeping your dogs inside the house. Folks didn't even need to see the spunk and blood snagged on the barbed wire to know that the wind had dumped somebody's trash. The dogs would turn crazy, whining and digging at the bottom of doors. God forbid you opened it. Most folks got right on the phone, blaming each other for the mess and calling someone else to pick them up.
Regular folks hold too much dignity to go hiking out in the face of a sex tornado. Nobody wants the community watching them harvest the shame like so many ripe tomatoes. It's either all the folks pick up their own or nobody will. Always a big showdown. Decency stalemate.
Rant takes off running, leaving Esther behind.
If I was still teaching, Lord, the tales I could tell you about Buster Casey, an exceptional young man.
Rant runs at full speed for the church.
Don't forget how some folks, including the FBI, was saying his grandma Esther's was Rant's victim number 1. Buster never got higher than a C in any language arts course, but there was a sense that Buster would build you an entire world out of just sticks and pebbles and the few words that he had learned. I'd compare it to the art made in prisons. Artwork based on the limited materials and tools, but requiring enormous amounts of time and focus. Monuments to patience.
Exterior, Carlyle house, day. Rant knocks on the door of Bodie's house. Bodie answers and he runs out with Rant. Exterior, Middleton Street, day. Rant and Bodie walk along a chain link fence, large sacks in their hands. They are picking up all the spilled pads, tampons, and used condoms. Rant plucks a condom from the front fence and holds it under his nose. He takes a whiff. Ugh.
Yeah, the Reverend Curtis Dean Fields. I know that stank anywhere.
Oh. Rant drops it in his bag. Then he picks up a used pad, traces of blood still on it. He gives it a smell.
Oh, that's Luann Perry, all right. Get back to taking those fluoride pills.
Rant offers the smell to Bodie, who declines.
Before anybody decent has showed up to help, Rant's picked the length of our back fence, guessing every dick and pussy.
Bodie watches Rant identify each of the smells.
Rant Casey had a dog sense of smell. Human bloodhound, he could track anything. By 12th grade, these talents started working together to his advantage.
Rant holds up a used pad.
Look at this. Miss Harvey from English class.
How can you tell?
On account of the red. Makes a pussy print, 100 times more personal than your fingerprint.
You didn't have to ask how Rant knows the shape of Miss Harvey's parts. Same as animal tracks in the snow or sand, he could hand draw you the kiss of a wide-ranging variety of local pussy. Just seeing how far the rubber was rolled down, Rant could reckon what dick had come off.
Rant plucked another pad off the fence. He sniffs it and looks back towards Bodie's house.
Who's that?
Rant drops it into his bag.
Get it?
Oh, really? Let me smell.
Rant just keeps moving down the fence line.
I'm pretty sure it's your mom's.
Walking out with Rant Casey, time had a habit of getting stopped. That moment, another when time got stuck. That moment forever and always doomed to keep happening in my head.
Between the time it took Rant Casey running to the church and the time we took it to get back to old Esther, dog packs have already found her. Irene's mama. They left her something awful to come pick up.
Rant Casey ever fucked my mom? I didn't ever have the balls to ask.
Interior, Rant's childhood room, 4 years ago. Little Rant, no more than 4, lays in his bed with his mom tucking him in.
Before Rant started kindergarten, his mom would put him down for a nap every day at 2. Yawning or not, Rant had to stay in bed, up in his attic room with his pillow propped up against the wall. In bed, he hugged a stuffed rabbit he called Bear.
Little Rant cuddles with Bear.
Picture the moment when your mom or dad first saw you as something other than a pretty, tiny version of them. You as them, but improved, better educated, innocent. Then picture when you stop being their dream.
Rant listens to Bear.
Bear wants to go play.
When he wasn't tired, Rant would say,
But Bear isn't sleepy.
Interior, Middleton High School, flashback. The teenage Irene Casey walks through the halls of the school, laughing with friends.
Girls who gone to school with Irene Shelby, we know how close Buster Casey came to not getting born. Irene being no older than 13 when Chester took up with her, 14 when the baby came due. To be honest, Irene was none too happy, her being the only gal stretch marked and breastfeeding in 9th grade.
You best swear I didn't tell you this, but before Buster came, Irene used to go on how she wanted to paint pictures and carve statues. She didn't never figure what kind, Went as far as Dr. Schmidt, trying to not have that baby. Went to Reverend Fields, asking permission to give it up. Didn't help none. Her own ma, Esther Shelby, told her that baby would be born of flesh and blood, cursed the devil.
Interior, Rant's childhood room, flashback. Erin bent down and plants a loving kiss on Rant's forehead.
We still need a nap. Let's count our stars till we get sleepy.
She guides Rant's eyes up to the glowing star stickers on the ceiling.
1, 2, 3.
She stands and heads for the door.
4, 5, 6.
Erin closes the door behind her, leaving Rant alone. Interior, interview room, day. Ruby Elliot sits at a table, being interviewed.
No lie, but Esther had her own child, Irene, about that same age. Chet Casey was the only voice that helped little Rant come into the world. Chet and Irene got hitched, but she had to quit school. Nowadays, folks see the path Buster Casey took, the plague he started, and it's hard to not figure Irene made the wrong choice.
Interior, Rant's childhood room, flashback. Little Rant lays in bed, picking his nose.
For that hour alone, Rant's finger had explored the warm, deep world inside his head.
Rant picks a booger and rolls it between his fingers until it darkens. He then reaches up and sticks it to the wall above his head, mashing it flat.
100 naps later, these specks formed constellations of their own, mirroring the stickers in the ceiling. Until that day, Rant didn't see the difference.
Interior, interview room, day.
If you can keep a secret, the first life that maniac Rant Casey wrecked was Irene's. The first bright future he ever ended was his mama's.
Interior, Rant's childhood room, flashback.
That 2 o'clock, when Rant stopped being an angel, his mother was tucking him in for his nap.
Irene leans in and kisses Rant's forehead.
Sweet dreams. Your mommy's little treasure. You're a little angel.
That moment, before the rattlesnake bites and high school erections, here's the last moment Rant and his mom will ever be that close. That much in love. That moment, the end of what we wish could last forever.
Interior, interview room, day. Oh, it's me. In my opinion, both the Caseys made unlikely parents. It's been my experience that plenty of young people look at their newborns as a practical joke, maybe a punishment. A baby just is. It ain't made of chrome for you to tool around in. A baby ain't going to lay your job with air conditioning. Chet Casey, he looked at that baby like his worst enemy and best friend combined. Interior, Rant's childhood room, flashback. Irene leans over Rant and brushes the hair from his eyes. She stands and stops. Her eyes focus on the wall, on all those little black spots. Oh.
What's this?
Rant arches his back to look at the wall above his head as Irene leans in and taps one. The black smudge comes free and falls onto the pillow around Rant's head.
As Rant used to say,
Some folks are just born human. The rest of us.
in one way, we're all the same.
Little Rant wasn't no sin he wouldn't commit. No little buddy growed up sinner enough for their whole entire family.
Irene keeps staring, her eyes trailing back and forth between the spots on the wall and her son's pride.
Here's one of those moments that lasts the rest of your life. A scene Rant saw flash before he died. The only island you'll find in the vast, vague ocean of your childhood.
Irene looks down at Rant.
You are.
We all have that moment when your folks first see you as someone not growing up to be them. His pride is her shame.
It's no lie. That Casey kid done nothing above ordinary except pull up roots and burn bridges.
Times like that, you look like a failed experiment your parents will have to face for the rest of their lives. You grow up to become living proof of your parents' limitations. They're less than masterpiece.
That day, Irene looked at Rant and said in a voice that would echo inside him for the rest of his life,
You disgusting little monster.
that was the real moment he was born. Start of Rant as a person.
Rant rolls over and peacefully falls asleep. Interior interview room, night.
Go ahead, ask Irene Casey about Rant's bedroom wall. She ended up hanging wallpaper. To her, dried snot was worse than asbestos. Even as an adult in his own apartment, the wall above Rant's bed wasn't anything you'd ever want to touch.
Interior interview room, day. Irene Casey sits at the table.
Near as I recall, we did put up wallpaper in Buddy's room when he was 3 or 4 years old. Pattern of cowboys and roping horses and some cactus. Something that wouldn't show dirt, off dark, but practical for a boy's room. The rest, about the wall covered with dried boogers. That never went on. Ugh. Buddy was a beautiful child, a regular little angel. We did paste stars on the ceiling, and that part is true, but the rest... I would never call my baby a monster or no curse from the devil. Buddy would never tell folks that story.
Interior Casey residence, day. The Casey family sits around the kitchen table, not just Chester and Irene, but all the grandparents.
That next Thanksgiving dinner after the Black Widow had stung old Granny Esther to death, Irene abandoned her seat in the kitchen. However, Rant's great-grandmother, Hattie, stood next in succession for a place at the adult table. The line of succession was as clear as the names and dates written inside the family Bible.
How creepy is this? By the end of Thanksgiving, old Granny Hattie twitching and scratching.
Hattie twitches with an aggressive seizure.
The fox fur piece she wears to every occasion. The shitty thing is jumping with fleas.
People rush around Hattie in slow motion as she falls to the ground, convulsing.
People that old, it only takes a gust of wind to kill them. A broken hip, a bee sting, just one mouthful of tuna gone bad. Like Black Widow spiders, flea bites, you're talking another natural part of the glorious redneck lifestyle. First, Granny Hattie complained about a sore throat and a headache, a stomach ache. Hattie is gasping for breath, an hour into the hospital, and she's dead with pneumonia.
The last rat-borne epidemic of Bacterium Yersinia pestis occurred in Los Angeles in 1924 and 1925. It was traced to the widespread practice of destroying prairie dog colonies by introducing animals infected with the plague.
Interior Rant's childhood room, afternoon. Rant tosses and turns, racked with nightmares. Exterior Middleton streets, nightmare. Little Rant stands with Grandma Esther. Her veil starts to lift off her head, driven by grown spider legs. They clawed her face, scratching and drawing blood. Grandma Esther screams and the legs dive into her mouth, choking her as the hat bursts in half. Rant turns, hearing the wild dogs barking down the street.
Them dreams was his feeling guilt, plain and simple. Over Rance killing those old women, over spreading his infection.
Interior interview room, night.
Yeah, those little fluff balls that look so cute in nature films. Every year, an average of 20 people cross paths with a plague-infested ground squirrel or chipmunk. Their lymph nodes balloon, their fingertips and toes turn black, and they die. The people, I mean, not the fluff balls.
Interior Casey residence, morning. Irene bustles around the kitchen, dozens of pots cooking.
Weeks ahead of Easter Sunday, you could smell the vinegar on Mrs. Casey's hands. Worse than pickling season. Mrs. Casey would keep a pot of water boiling, first to hard cook her eggs, then another pot of water to boil with vinegar. Add chopped junk for color, and dye her eggs.
Interior Casey residence, morning, later. The screen doors open with a spree. Whap! Bodie and Rant run inside and see Irene at the kitchen table, focusing intently on an egg, her glasses resting on the tip of her nose. She dips an embroidery needle into a small cup of melted wax and uses it to draw something onto the egg.
You couldn't help yourself. You had to stop and watch. Invisible as spy writing, only Miss Casey could tell where the white wax disappeared on the white egg.
Erin doesn't look up from her egg.
You were chewing tar, spit it out. You'll find graham crackers on the stove.
Even being hungry for lunch, you get nosing into Mrs. Casey's egg work.
It's compelling that so many cultures practice a meticulous yet transitory art form as a spiritual ritual, prayer, or meditation.
Pull up an egg or get out. You're making me nervous.
The boys sit and Erin hands them both embroidery needles and eggs.
Get an idea in your head. Draw your idea with a needle.
Drop by drop, white on white, invisible, secret.
Tell me I can't figure out what to draw.
Something will come.
Whether it's Peransky eggs or the sand mandalas of Tibetan Buddhists, their common theme is to somehow achieve an intense focus and complete absorption of the artist's attention. Despite the fragile nature of the artwork, the process becomes a means of stepping outside of the temporal.
Interior, Casey residence, morning, later. Rant, Bodie, and Erin all sit around the table working on decorating their eggs. The screen door opens. Spree, whap. Chester stands in the doorway.
What's for lunch?
Erin doesn't look up from her egg.
Thought you were eating at the diner.
Erin, don't do this to the boy.
You told me you were eating at the diner.
Don't ruin him.
Do what?
Rant has stopped drawing.
Don't ruin the boy for getting married.
Chester reaches down and picks up 2 white eggs from a bowl next to Erin.
Not those.
But already 2 eggs already gone, disappeared inside Mr. Casey's hand.
Chester walks the 2 eggs over to the sink.
Not those.
But Chester's already tapping the eggs onto the sink to peel them.
Lunchtime that day was the first time I ever felt time get stuck. That with the sun stopped a century, smack dab in the window above the kitchen sink. Even the clocks held their breath.
Chester starts eating, staring out to the kitchen window. As soon as he'd finished with the 2 eggs, he leaves through the screen door. Spree, whap.
After that, the sun moved to the edge of the window frame. Time came unstuck. All the clock hands started back to tick.
Interior, interview room, day. Sheriff Carlyle sits at the table.
Don't make Chet Casey the villain for the crime his boy does. My take is, you're not born loving nobody. Love is a skill you learn, like house training a dog. Maybe a talent you do or do not build up, like a muscle. And if you can't learn yourself to love blood family, then you'll never truly love. Not nobody.
Interior, Casey residence, late afternoon. Erin starts spooning eggs into the boiling pot of vinegar. He dips hers into a large pot of red. When she pulls it out, the eggs look covered with an intricate lattice. Erin puts Rant's egg into the spoon.
What color?
Green.
You know it is.
She dips it into the pot. The wax lines make it look striped, sectioned up to make squares. Erin lifts the egg out. Rant takes it carefully in his hand and dip it half into the yellow, half green and half yellow.
That's a beautiful pineapple.
Rant holds up the egg proudly.
It's an MK2 fragmentation grenade.
Packed with granulated TNT, throwable up to 100 feet, with a burst radius of 33 feet, a cast iron body for shrapnel, a kill radius of 7 feet.
Rant sets the egg down on a towel next to the other eggs.
Let's make lots more.
According to Rant, the garden was his mom's territory. The lawn, his dad's. Erin told time by the flowers in bloom. To Chester Casey, 1 week equaled time to mow the grass. 1 hour meant time to move the lawn sprinkler. We all live by different clocks and calendars.
Exterior, Casey residence, morning. Erin stands in front of Rant, handing him a basket.
One Easter, Rant said his mom hid eggs among the tulips and rosebuds.
Happy hunting, baby.
Rant still has a scar on his hand where the spider bit him.
Exterior, Casey residence, morning. Rant roots around looking for eggs. Rant reaches under a rose bush and quickly pulls his hand back. His eyes go wide, looking at the spider perched on the back of his hand. He slaps it away, but the skin has already gone red and puffy. Rant sprints back to the kitchen door, crying, holding out his already swollen hand. Chester looks up at Rant, still with tears rolling down his little face. Erin sees none of this, still in the bathroom getting ready.
Pipe down.
Church scene where his granny Esther keeled over, dead, that's still fresh in Rant's mind. The way her dentures bit into her tongue.
Chester swats Rant on the backside.
Don't come back inside until you found all the eggs.
Rant still holds out his swollen hand.
It's a Black Widow. I'm gonna die. It hurts.
Chester turns him around and pushes him back into the yard.
As soon as you bring back all those eggs, we'll get you some medical attention.
Chester latches the screen door.
If you don't take too long, maybe you won't lose that hand.
Interior, interview room, day.
Rant always went on about leaving home, getting out, and handpicking himself a new family. But to my way of seeing it, that's never going to happen. If you don't accept your folks for all their worst ways, no stranger could ever measure up. All Rant learned himself was how to leave folks behind.
Exterior, Casey residence, morning. Rant rushes around the yard.
Now it's turned to a race against death.
Rant is knocking flowers to one side, busting stems, trampling petunias.
With every heartbeat, Rant can feel the poison in his hand pump closer to his brain. Sting of the bite, fading to numb. First his hand losing feeling, then the most part of his arm.
Erin steps outside and sees Rant there, panting face down in what's left of her garden, dirt caked to his tears. Chester puts an arm around Erin's shoulder and leads her away. Rant just sobs.
Rant never found more than those 3 eggs.
Exterior, Casey residence, late afternoon. Erin and Chester return to see Rant sitting on the back porch, waiting.
They come home from church, and that's all he had to show for a whole day of hunting. 3 eggs and a spider bite. His hand already shrink back to kid size. That spider, it's that Black Widow spider that got Rant hooked on poison.
Exterior, Casey garden, midday. Erin looks through the garden.
Even after Miss Casey waded into her garden, all the plants mashed and dug up, she couldn't find a single one of the Easter eggs she hid. The rest of that summer, her garden was ruined. Another week, and Mr. Casey's yard would be too.
Exterior, Casey residence, morning. Chester's pulling out the lawnmower, getting ready to mow.
Get this. Rant told me he found all the eggs, then smashed them into a box, hidden them in some barn or shack. Every week he'd sneak out 2 or 3 eggs and stick them in the deepest part of the grass just before his dad would mow the lawn. By then, the eggs had turned fugly black, the worst kind of rotten.
Chester mows.
Every time his dad ran over one with the mower, you'd have exploded stink everywhere, on the mower blade, on the grass, all over his father's boots and pant legs. Rant's hand painted green grenades turned into landmines. The lawn and garden were both disaster areas. Rant said inside the chain link fence was a jungle. Black stink sprayed on each side of the house. Everything gone so wild we couldn't see the porch. Driving up, you'd think no one lived there.
Chester hits one of the eggs and reacts to the smell. Interior, interview room, day.
He dyed eggs gray with a red stripe, made to match CS Gas ABC M7A2 riot grenades. Light green with white top half to be an M8 smoke, AN-M8 smoke grenade. Mrs. Casey kept the colors bottled, all that was left of her garden. The rest of the year, Rant used to sneak drops of those colors, summer into Christmas. He'd dig his dad's dirty shorts out of the laundry pile, and Rant would dye eyedropper spots of yellow in the crotch of every pair. After every sit-down piss, Mr. Casey would dangle his dick, trying to get out the last stray drop. Blot him with toilet paper, but every week more yellow spots in his shorts. It almost killed his pa when Rant switched to using drops from the red food color.
Interior, interview room, night.
As an adult, Rant's favorite way to skip work was to put a drop of red food coloring into each eye and tell his boss he had conjunctivitis. You know, pink eye. For weeks of sick leave, he'd use yellow to imply hepatitis. Rant's real master stroke was to arrive at his job and let someone else notice his eyes, red or yellow, and make the boss force him to go home. Rant would arrive at my place with his bright yellow eyes, and we'd cruise the field for a tag team.
Interior, interview room, day.
Mr. Casey spent big bucks trying to cure a bladder infection he never did have. He swallowed so much antibiotics he couldn't take a solid shit most of that year.
Interior, interview room, night.
Before he died, Rant gave me a white, hard-boiled egg. He said he'd written something on the shell in wax. If anything happened to him, Rant said only then could I dye the egg and read the message. By now, that egg is so old I'm afraid to touch it. If the shell cracks with the smell that had come out, I'd be evicted.
Interior, interview room, day.
After Rant took off to the city, after he died, the FBI come and grilled me. You should have seen how their eyes lighted up when I told them about the Easter hand grenades.
Interior, interview room, day.
Don't laugh, but one landmark summer, a stick of licorice cost you $5 in gold. A regular plastic squirt gun set you back $50. The spring of the Tooth Fairy upset the whole entire Middleton standard of living. Rant come to my house one Saturday telling my mom we need the whole day to collect old paint cans for a recycling merit badge.
Interior, interview room, night.
Promise not to tell, but a time we were dating, Grant Casey told me about a stranger. The time his grandma Esther lay dying, a stranger drove up the road from nowhere. Said he'd look after Esther, and he told Rant where to find the gold. Just a tall old man, Rant says. That old man told he was Rant's real true daddy come visiting from the city. That stranger told how Chester Casey was nobody.
Exterior, Middleton, day. Young Rant and Bodie walk along the street, stopping at houses.
Didn't matter how hard you earned it, a scout merit badge with all that fancy embroidery still cost $5. Rant and me weren't getting none of those badges. That summer, we pushed a wheelbarrow, asking the farms to knock on doors, asking...
Can we take away any rusted cans, old dried paint you folks might have stacked around the place?
Cub Scout scrap metal project, Rant calls them, and folks smile, all too happy to be rid of old cans.
Interior, interview room, day. Hartley Reed sits at the table.
Yeah, I'm the owner of Trackside Grocery. That one kid, the Jordan girl, she brung in a handful of gold coins, most of them Liberty Head dollars going back to 1897. Found out later on she took a rock and hammered apart her grandma's dentures. Traded those loose teeth for this tooth fairy money, the kids called it. Brung the coins to me and took home a dollhouse come special order from the Walker's catalog.
Interior, Casey Family Barn, day. Rant and Bodie sit next to their mountain of cans, pulling them open with a screwdriver. They look into the cans and see things wrapped in newspaper. They pull the newspaper open and see large stacks of gold and silver coin.
Gold bugs.
Folks not trusting governments or the bank.
Lonely old misers stockpiling gold and silver and heart attacking with their lives secret unshared. So you can't call it a robbery if the owners is dead and if the right and lawful heirs wasn't loved enough to get told about the money being hid. Pirate treasures.
Turns out, Rant knowed the money was around. Not in every paint can, but enough. Knowed it for a long time. But didn't bother to fetch any cans until he figured how to reason us having such riches.
Interior, interview room, day.
Supply and demand. Nobody pointed a gun to those kids to make them spend their money. Funds was their money to buy whatever they wanted. Just natural when demand increases, so do prices. When you get every kid in town bidding up cherry fizzes, the cost is bound to inflate.
Interior, interview room, day.
The inflation was how Rant figured to launder our pirate treasure. Starting with our most best friends in 5th grade, we asked around.
Who had a loose tooth?
Any kid with a coming out tooth, ka-ching, we give him a silver or gold coin, tell him to say the tooth fairy brung it. 5th grade, most kids figure the tooth fairy's a lie, but our folks ain't told us as much. So every weekend, we're collecting paint cans from far-off farms, and every week we're giving kids more gold and silver to tell their folks it's from the fairy or baby tooth. Most folks know here's a lie, but moms and dads not wanting to admit their own lying about the tooth fairy and Santa Claus and all, us lying to our folks, them lying to us, nobody wanted to admit to being a liar. and none of the fifth graders ratted on Rant or me since they wanted to keep the money and figured more's coming. Everybody caught trapped in the same tooth fairy lie.
Exterior, Middleton Day. Rant and Bodie are dealing with a line of kids trading in teeth.
Bicuspids brung $5 gold. A molar, 10. Henderson claimed to lose 12 incisors, 9 canine, and 16 wisdom tooths in the passing of that summer vacation. It was older kids selling their teeth to fifth graders for a half cut of the fairy money. Kids tempting to pass off horse tooths, dog tooths, big cow tooths chewed down to the stub and roots. Got so Rant turned tooth expert. Piled up in Rant's bedroom, he had a soup can full of folks' teeth, then cigar boxes, shoe boxes, and shopping bags. The Middleton Tooth Museum.
Interior, room day.
Making all the fifth grade rich. It didn't look as suspect, Rant and me getting bit. Rant and me being rich. But for every gold or silver coin we pass on to a kid, we held back 2 for each of us. Rant holding back double what I did, not spending his.
Interior, room day.
Mr. Reed at the trackside grocery was only too happy to sell them candy. Another reflection of the time, the grocery took out the gifts for milady section and extended the toy and hobby section all the way down to the frozen foods. For a year, it seemed as if half the store was candy bars and air rifles and dolls.
Interior, interview room day.
Looking back, we sparked a boom and rebirth of little downtown Middleton. Kids buying up new bikes, and the trackside finally paved its parking lot. Kids going back to school that fall, they wore lizard skin cowboy boots, rodeo belt buckles studded with turquoise, wristwatches so heavy they made a kid lope to one side when he walked. The second boom came at Christmas. Santa Claus stuffing gold and silver in the stockings of fifth graders. Didn't matter naughty or nice.
Spooky part is, except for Rant, most people in Middleton had no idea how far someone had gone to acquire that gold.
Exterior, Middleton Day. Kids bustle around a woman selling shaved ice.
The children told about one woman selling shaved ice in a paper cone with cherry syrup, 2 cones for $1. You'd watch the kids take 2 bites and drop the rest in the playground grass. Money you don't work to earn, you spend very quickly.
Interior, Middleton Homes. Varies. Several kids get ready for bed, prepping their teeth for the tooth fairy.
Tooth fairy come different to every family. At the Elliots, they wrapped the lost tooth in tissue, slept with under a pillow. In the morning, inside the tissue was money. My family, we put the tooth in water, but we left it sitting overnight on the bedside table. Near a window, left open a crack for the fairy to fly inside. Sole and only time I almost told on Rant Casey was one night I changed my tooth in the glass for an 1897 Morgan silver dollar. But in the morning, it was just a regular $quarter, dated modern. I know my folks had switched and took the real money, but I had to act happy. Crossed my heart, the summer of the tooth fairy destroyed all credibility anybody had in Middleton. Since then, nobody's word stands up. To everybody, everybody else is a liar. But folks still smile and act nice.
Interior, Casey residence morning. The Casey family sits around the Thanksgiving table, still divided into the grown-ups and kids table.
Yeah, the next Thanksgiving, Rant's Granny Belle is in line for a seat at the adult table. Then is Uncle Clem, then Uncle Walt, and Aunt Patty. Rant says his mom stood there and counted that six relatives would have to die before she'd eat like a grown-up. Before the end of that Thanksgiving, Granny Belle was already sweating with fever, running a fever of 105, but still complaining about the cold. She also had dizziness, fatigue, and muscle aches. Rant says,
Granny Belle can't catch her breath because it turns out her lungs are filling with fluid. Her kidneys have failed.
Halfway through the hospital, Granny Belle stopped breathing.
Turns out, Lucky Grandma Belle's been infected by a killer virus. It's called hantavirus, and you get it from something Rant called the white-footed mouse.
Exterior, Middleton Fields morning. A white-footed mouse runs through the field, avoiding a hawk circling overhead.
The mouse shits, and the shit dries into dust. You breathe the shit dust, and the virus kills you within 6 weeks. This old lady wearing red lipstick with powder on her nose. Rant says the country tested the talc in Belle's compact, and of course it was half mouse shit. The dried, ground-up dust of wild mouse turds. Powder puff was loaded with that shit dust.
The hawk swoops down and grabs the mouse.
Mystery solved. Kind of solved.
Well, don't get the idea Rent Casey was some kind of like naturopathic serial killer, spiders, fleas, mice, and bees, but you could make the argument.
Interior Carlyle house, late afternoon. Bodie stands proud.
Just a little part of my gold bought me that midnight blue Cub Scout shirt and pants, the knife, belt, and even the compass. Since Milt Tommy was a 6th grader and didn't get no treasure, I paid him $100 in gold for his sash with every merit badge already sewed to it. Every badge from first aid to good citizenship. Folks really will sell you anything for the right price, and I learned a cash-bought merit badge ain't worth shit.
Interior interview room night.
In Africa, people don't believe in the tooth fairy. Instead, they have the tooth mouse, a tiny magical rodent that steals teeth and replaces them with spare change. By first believing in Santa Claus, then the Easter Bunny, then the tooth fairy, Rent Casey was recognizing that those myths are more than pretty stories and traditions to delight children, or to modify behavior. Each of these traditions asks a child to believe the impossible in exchange for a reward. In this way, a child is stepped up to greater feats of imagination and faith as he or she matures, beginning with Santa in infancy and ending with the tooth fairy as the child acquires adult teeth. Or, plainly put, beginning with all the possibility of childhood and ending with an absolute trust in the national currency.
Interior Middleton Church, day. The residents of the town sit in the pews enjoying the service.
Rant saw how resolving the illusions is crucial for how the child uses any new skills. A child who has never coached with Santa Claus may never develop an ability to imagine. To him, nothing exists except the literal and tangible. A child who is disillusioned abruptly by his peers or siblings may choose to never believe in anything, tangible or intangible again, to never trust or wonder. But a child who relinquishes the illusions of Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the
but Rand sits silent, watching everyone else.
That child may recognize the strength of his own imagination and faith. He will embrace the ability to create his own reality. That child becomes his own authority. He determines the nature of his world, his own vision. And by doing so, by the power of his example, he determines the reality of the other two types, those who can't imagine and those who can't trust.
Exterior Carlyle house, afternoon. A teenage Rand walks up to Bodie and hands him several large milk jugs. Rand has a whole stack behind him, equaling 24 jugs total. Each jug is filled with teeth. Behind those are 2 large suitcases. Disgusting.
By my account, the suitcases he hauled to the city, they held nothing but gold money.
I need you to curate the Middleton Tooth Museum when I'm gone.
Exterior Middleton Desert Fields, a day. Rand and Bodie lay on the ground, his shoulders trailing down a hole under the dirt.
Feel anything?
My hand blind, touching a tangle of sagebrush roots, smooth rocks, then fur. The soft hairs moving off, out of my reach, down the tunnel.
Go after it.
My hand is still greasy from Mrs. Casey's leftover meatloaf. My hand, lost somewhere underground, stretched beyond where I figured it could get. I reached to feel that fur and the rattle of a fast heartbeat underneath. That heartbeat almost as fast as mine.
Interior interview room, day.
History is the girls Rant liked, he used to kiss. Boys, he took them out animal fishing. Both ways, it was a test of your faith.
Exterior Middleton Desert Fields, day. Bodie still fishing his arm under the dirt.
Summers, most folks would go fishing over along the river in hot weather. Rant would head the other way. It wasn't nothing to find Rant walked straight all morning out in the desert, laid down flat to one side, his arm disappeared up to the elbow in some dirty hole. Didn't matter what critter, scorpion, snake, or prairie dog, Rant would be reaching blind into the dark underground, hoping for the worst. That black widow on Easter Sunday, since it didn't kill him, Rant figured to hunt down what might.
See, I've been vaccinated against measles and diphtheria. A rattlesnake's just my vaccination against boredom. Cottonmouth, my vaccination against doing chores. Pit vipers, it's about half the time they forget to inject their venom. Rattlesnakes and cottonmouths, they're truly more scared of you. But we humans give off so much heat, that's what a pit viper sees. Something so big and hot shows up, and it's All a snake can do to get done to unfold those swing down fangs and sink them into your arm.
Nothing more pissed off Rant than getting a dry bite. Pain but no poison. Vaccination without the medicine. Those double holes marching up his arms, ringed around his shins, no red welts, dry bites. Instead of river fishing, Rant walked out beyond the back porch, beyond the barrel for burning trash, past the machine shed, out into the fields leased out for alfalfa, the rainbird sprinklers. Beyond that, another horizon. 3 horizons outside the Casey's back door, you found yourself in the desert. Rant called his walking out to get animal bit. He called it gone fishing.
Fire ant should have been a red flag. Buddy never come in the house without his hands and feet being all over a red rash of ant bites. Pain you'd expect to make most kids cry. Buddy wore it no worse off than a heat rash.
His folks didn't hear the half of it. Rant could roll up his sleeves at school and count off the bites. Red ant, hobo spider, scorpion.
More of my vaccinations.
Interior Middleton High School gym. Day. The kids line up to play dodgeball.
All through 9th grade, Rant would ask to be excused from playing Friday dodgeball against the 12th graders on account of a fresh rattlesnake bite.
Rant walks over to the coach and pulls off a sock, revealing a red swollen foot. The coach nods, blows his whistle, and the rest of the kids start getting pelted as Rant takes a seat on the bleachers.
Between him and me, this was his vaccination against playing dodgeball.
Exterior Middleton Desert Field. Day. They continue fishing.
The Rant, pain was one horizon. Poison the next horizon. Disease was nothing but the horizon after all of them.
Interior Spider Nest. Day. A black widow scurries around its web.
Black widow spider only kills about 5% of those it bites. An hour after the bite, the neurotoxin allotrotoxin spreads throughout the victim's lymphatic system. Their abdomen contracts into a solid washboard of rigid muscle tissue. You might vomit or sweat profusely. Another common symptom is priapism. It's nature's cure for erectile dysfunction. Rant never told his parents, but that Easter was the first time he had ever experienced an erection. Sex and insect venom were completely collapsed in his childhood psyche.
Interior Car Night. Echo and Rant sit in the back seat together.
That's the secret behind Rant's craving for venom. Even in the city, he needed to find a black widow or a brown recluse before he was worth anything in the sack. Getting a booster shot, he used to call it. Don't try this at home, but the result is a dick that stays hard for hours. On demand and big as a gear shift. A little calcium gluconate and everything goes back to normal.
Echo turns back to Rant and moves in for a kiss. Exterior Middleton Desert Field. Day. Bodie and Rant are still fishing.
The only why Rant Casey got himself bit was to catch a buzz. Poison was just being another drug to abuse, another high. Speaking as an officer of the law, I can tell that you, an addicted addict, ain't like regular folks. By the end of this story, you'll be pretty near shocked what Rant has done to get and stay strung out.
Don't ask me. I never did figure out the attraction. While other kids was sniffing gasoline or model airplane glue, most summer days, Rant would be belly down on the sand next to sagebrush. Most kids around here, they'd be escaping from reality, while Rant was trying to get ready for it. Those dirty holes under those rocks he'd tip up a crack, those places where he couldn't see, that was the future he was so scared about. After he'd stuck his hand into the dark and not died from it, after then, Rant wasn't so scared. The whole length of the summer, Rant's toes and finger would be frayed skin, fringed with dripping blood. One bite of venom, one little squirt of poison at a time. Rant was training for something big, getting vaccinated against fear. No matter the future, any terrible job or marriage or military service, it had to be an improvement over a coyote chomping on your foot.
Interior Restaurant Night. Echo and Rant sit at a small table.
Get this. The first night I met Rant Casey, we were eating Italian, and he says,
You never been snake bit?
he's wearing a coat, so I have no idea how mutilated his arms look. As if this is my shortcoming. He keeps goading me.
I can't believe a person could live so long and never been sprayed by a skunk.
As if mine had been a life of utter caution and deprivation.
Rant shakes his head and looks down at his plate.
Man, if you've never been rabid, you ain't never lived.
The nerve of him. Like he's got some redneck holy man. Get him. He couldn't even work a 3-speed mountain bike on a steering column. Until that night, he'd never seen ravioli.
Interior interview room day. A little screw up, that Casey boy. He was presenting symptoms before he bothered to let his folks know he'd been bit. With rabies, the virus is carried in the saliva of an infected animal. Any bite or lick, even a sneeze, can spread the disease. Once you have it, the virus spreads through your central nervous system, up your spine to your brain, where it reproduces. The early stage is called the eclipse phase of the disease. Because you present no symptoms, you can be contagious as all get out, but still look and feel normal. This eclipse phase can last a couple of days to years and years, and all that time you can be infecting folks with your saliva. Exterior, Middleton Desert Field day. Bodie shifts and adjusts his arm.
Instead of boosting peaks, Rant wanted to go fishing. He used to say,
Yeah, my life might be little and boring, but at least it's mine. Not some assembly line secondhand hand-me-down life.
Getting bit by a rattlesnake, that's pretty low tech.
Interview room day. The intolerable aspect was that Buster Casey was a popular boy. He must have been. In the past 10 years, we've treated 6 cases of rabies infections in a male, all 6 cases being Buster himself. But we've had 47 infections in girls, most of those girls he attended school with, and 2 of those being his female teachers. Out of those, 3 chose to terminate pregnancies by unnamed fathers at the same time. Interior interview room day.
Any way you look at it, Bustard was a hazard to have around playing spin the bottle.
Interior interroom night.
Well, the history is Rant Casey had rabies more of his life than he didn't. And hatching that much of any bug in your brain had to make him some crazy. Still, there's plenty of folks who find crazy people to be very attractive.
Interior interview room day.
Buster did never get me pregnant, but he gave me rabies plenty often. First time, standing under the mistletoe at the school Christmas pageant, 5th grade. One kiss, me wearing my red velvet jumper with underneath it a white blouse, standing in the middle of the front row on stage and singing Oh Holy Night, singing notes sweet as any angel, my hair blonde as an angel, hair and curls going halfway down my back. Me in the picture of sweetness, and I had rabies. Courtesy of Buster Casey.
Interior interview room day. In all fairness, I can't blame all the infections on that one boy, but we haven't had a single case of rabies since Buster Casey left town. Interior interview room day.
Loads of girls went rabid my exact same way, maybe half our class freshman year. Brenda Jordan blamed her rabies on bobbing for apples during a Halloween party, taking her turn behind Buster. But in fact, she kissed him. Buster Casey was, for some girls, what snakes was for him. A kind of place your folks tell you to never to go. But a kind of small mistake that'll save you from a bigger mistake later on. Mistakes like kissing Buster. Most times, it's a worse mistake if you don't take them. After a good-looking boy gives you rabies 2-3 times, you'll settle down, marry someone less exciting for the rest of your life.
Interior car night. Echo sits with Rant.
For a second date, Rant wanted to rake up leaves in the park. One of the surefire ways to contract rabies is to mess with bats. Look under leaves and you find a bat to bite you. Keep that in mind next time you go jump into a pile of dead leaves.
History is that boy was very popular, except maybe with his daddy.
Weird is that? A sexually conflicted 13-year-old rattlesnake venom junkie with rabies? Well, it's safe to say that's every father's worst nightmare.
History is Buster Casey was the kind of mistake a girl needs to make while she's still young enough to recover.
Exterior Middleton Desert Fields day. Bodie shifts his arm going further down the hole.
Feel a heartbeat?
Bodie nods yes.
Don't pull out.
Feel that fur, soft and warm, until kapow! Punch of something pushing through the slack between my thumb and next finger. The web of skin there sunk through with something sharp, and my arm shaking so hard it hammers the tunnel walls already tight around my elbow.
Bodie pulls his hand out of the hole, blood trickling out of just one hole, big and straight across.
You can bit. Jackrabbit bit.
Rant holds up his own hand, blood still dripping from his own bite.
Oh, so this here, as far as I'm concerned, this is how church should feel.
Interior, interview room night.
Before the advent of the Rant serotype of the less virus, no more than 100,000 people died of rabies each year, primarily in tropical and subtropical regions. Despite an annual expenditure of $1 billion to contain this disease and a century of vaccinations and public awareness, the infection rate among animals reached a historic peak in 1993. Due to this epidemic attributed to Buster Casey, human beings are currently the largest mammal reservoir of the rabies virus. Once the virus begins replicating and is transported along sensory and motor nerves, the infected subject can remain asymptomatic for months, despite shedding virus and infecting additional subjects. That scenario appears to be the case with the alleged superspreader, Buster Casey. No, epidemiologists no longer use the term patient zero. Any individual responsible for 10 or more infections we now refer to as a superspreader. What typhoid Mary Malin was to typhoid, what Gatten Douglas was to AIDS, and what Lu Jianyu was to SARS, Buster Casey would be for rabies.
Exterior, Middleton Park, midday. The Casey family is gathered around a picnic table celebrating. All the aunts, uncles, and cousins gathered around the barbecues, kids roasting marshmallows, a whole acre of Casey's.
Get this. Independence Day, 1 year. That's sunny day. First one bee, then another buzzed at an adult table. The old grannies waved them away. Then the table was covered. The adults were coated in bees.
Bees start swarming around the picnic table, and the adults start freaking out.
The county medical examiner was asking, did any of the disease handle bees lately? He's wanting to be told. Did any of them work with the beehives? Something he called swarm attractant would explain the attack.
Dosanov pheromones, a plastic vial the size of your little finger, exudes the bee attractant equivalent to 5,000 honeybees fanning and scenting the air. Apis mellifera, the common honeybee, follows the scent and seeks out any cracks or openings in which to create a new hive.
The adults are swatting at all of the bees as the bees start climbing into their noses and mouths.
Swatting at these bees will prompt them to exude the alert pheromone, which attracts additional bees to attack. Because their primary predators are bears, the attacking bees focus on the eyes, nose, and open mouth of the aggressor. Any feature that occurs as a dark opening, including the ears, the bees will swarm. Any carbon dioxide the victim exhales will make the attacking bees more aggressive. Swarm attractant itself has a pleasant, faint citrus smell, almost undetectable to humans. Because Nastanov pheromones are so potent, the preferred method of storage is to place the plastic vial inside a sealed glass jar, then secure the sealed jar inside a deep freeze.
The park gets dark as the bees start to block the sun.
It was like a cloud blotting out the sun. A big black fucking storm, humming in the middle of a nice sunny day. It started to rain, but instead of water, it's raining bee stings. No shit. It's pouring down sheer pain.
People are running for their cars, screaming until their mouths are filled with bees. They fall to the ground, choking, stung, and smothered to death.
By the time the county vector control could intervene, Rant's Uncle Clem was dead. So were his Aunt Hattie and Uncle Cletus. Uncle Walt died in the hospital.
The FBI shitheads who asked about party crash nights after Rant died, those agents loved the bee story. They couldn't take notes fast enough.
Relax. Nobody called it murder. Not yet.
Well, how weird is that? It was like something from the Old Testament. The killer bee picnic, the mouse shit attack, the plague of fleas, and the deadly spider hat. The next Thanksgiving dinner, with 7 oldsters dead, the rest of that generation stayed home. The oldest Casey's turned over the adult table to their middle-aged kids. Siege ended. Baton passed.
The picnic is now a crime scene. Dead bodies swarming with bees and survivors running in fear. Interior, car, night. Echo sits in the back of the car, seemingly alone.
Make time stand still. What sand and mandalas are to Buddhist monks, and embroidery is to Irene Casey. Eating pussy was to Rant.
Rand pokes up in the middle of going down on her.
He used to wedge his face between my legs and slip his tongue into me.
Rand perches himself onto his elbows and licks his lips, chin dripping.
You ate something with cinnamon for breakfast.
He rolls his eyes, thinking.
Not French toast, something else. For breakfast, you drank a cup of Constant Comet tea. That's the cinnamon.
From just the smell and taste of me, he'd nail my whole day. Tea, whole wheat, toast without butter, plain yogurt, blueberries, a tempeh sandwich, one avocado, a glass of orange juice, and a beet salad.
And you had an order of fast food onion rings.
Rant licks his lips.
A large order.
I called him the pussy psychic.
Rant goes back down.
Get real. Most guys are keeping score with every lap of their tongue. Every time they come up for air, they're clocking your pleasure. And lick after lick, you know this had better balance out with some of the pleasure you give them back. So, lick after lick, you can never relax and get off, not when you know that the meter is always running. Every lick is an investment in getting licked back. Even guys who hate bookkeeping and doing their taxes, guys who could only shrug if you ask their savings account or credit card balance, they'll compute the exact number of laps their tongue's done around your snatch and the payback they have coming. The sexual equivalent of a clock watchers or bean counters. That's every guy, except Rant Casey. He'd stick his tongue into you and years could pass. Mountains erode.
Rant stops and sits up, plucking hair off his tongue.
What happened today? Something happened.
Forget it.
Rant licks her again.
Parking ticket? No, something worse.
Forget it. Nothing happened.
Rant licks her slower this time. He looks up at her and their eyes meet.
I'm sorry you lost your job today, didn't you?
My stupid fucking job I had selling mobile fucking phones. Like he could find out anything with his nose. And from that taste of you. That was Rant Casey. Always right. And between orgasms, I started to cry.
Every family has its scriptures, but most can't articulate them. These stories people repeat to reinforce their identity, who they are, where they come from, why they behave as they do. Grant used to say, every family is a regular little cult.
Interior, car, night.
Here's a single girl's secret. The reason you eat dinner with a man on a first date is so you know how he's going to fuck you. A slob who gobbles down the meal, never looks at a bite. You know not to crawl into bed with that guy.
Interior, interview room, day.
Come Christmas, foreign folks have a tradition of baking a cake with itty bitty baby Jesus hid inside. Folks say the person who finds the Christ child will be a special blessed in the next year. But Irene Casey used to fold into her batter as much scoops of baby Jesus as she did flour and sugar. Put a Christ child in every bite. Could be she only wanted more folks to feel lucky, but it never looked right. Folks burping up whole packs and litters of naked pink plastic saviors.
Interior, car, night. Rant is still going down on Echo.
This once, after I had an orgasm, inside of me is a pressure, not a pain, more like that feeling when your tampon turns sideways. Like I might have had to take a piss. Rant put 2 fingers inside, takes out something pink, bigger than a tooth, small and shiny with spit. Even naked, we were never touching. Dried, sticky, wet, slimy, between his skin and mine, you could always feel a thin layer of sweat, spit, sperm. Still propped on both his elbows, Rant's looking at something cupped in his hand, as if he's just sucked this pink object out of me. So, of course, I just have to sit up and look. but it's a joke. A little doll. A baby made of pink plastic.
How did that get in there?
His mother's mantra.
Rant grins.
Well, this here makes me the lucky king.
It almost didn't matter that a spit gave me rabies.
Interior interview room day.
Grant Casey would go down on his belly in the sand, plant his elbows on either side of a burrow, and poke his nose inside, just from the stink, sniffing from dirty hole. Grant could tell rabbit or coyote or skunk or deadly spider could even tell you what kind of spider. To be Grant Casey's friend was always some test. For guys, you'd had to shove your hand in his choice of dark hole, far up your elbow, not figuring what you'd find.
Exterior Middleton Desert Fields, sunset. Bodie and Rant lay on the sand, staring up at the night sky.
Us in the desert, I guess desert, watching the light wash up from the horizon. Fire colors. I told Rant about the federal ICU act I had just read about.
Rant moves and shoves hand down his pants, gritting his teeth.
Shit, spider bite boner. That always happens.
Rant shifts to hide the boner.
Chronic priapism is one lesser symptom of allotroxin poison. By exploiting his poison-induced erections, Rant was liquidating any collateral he had left in the community. He could never go back home, but he would never have to. Something the wealthy know that most people don't is that you never burn a bridge, such a waste. Instead, you sell it.
Interior interview room day. That's you, Chelsea.
Our geometry teacher, Mr. Weiland, the same teacher to dog us through Algebra 1 and Algebra 2.
Interior Middleton High School classroom day. Mr. Weiland stands at the front of the class. He starts making his way to Rant, seated in the back of the class.
And would drag you to stand at the board and demonstrate your limitations to the class. He picks that day to choose Grant Casey.
What seems to be the problem, Mr. Casey?
Rant gestures his head down and points with double finger guns to the crotch of his pants. They're tented with hard on.
Mr. Weiland, sir, I got a serious erection here for going on like 2 hours.
No lie, the gasp, but not from the A-plus rows up front. It's more the B students who believe that they heard what they heard. Some C kids snort and laughs.
As a fellow matured male, Mr. Weiland, you can appreciate the painful and potentially injurious nature of this situation.
All the air comes out of Weiland in one push.
You think maybe somebody should take a look at it?
The geometry equation chalked on the board disappeared, gone from the room. Nothing but chalk dust, chicken scratchings in the same room with the low-down dirty miracle of a teenage hard-on. Inside his head, Mr. Weiland's supercomputing the correct answer. Him stood up to look dumb in front of folks.
Interior interroom day night.
Weiland's beyond trapped. If this teacher slams Rant, merely laughs and tells this punk kid to sit down and concentrate on numbers, the school's looking at a lawsuit. If the kid's got a serious medical emergency and his dingus turns purple and drops off, then the school district will be settling that claim for the next $10 million of budget cuts. Sure, Rant had a history of disruption, but sure, Rant could have presented the situation in a less invasive manner. But none of that will count for much in a courtroom. While Weiland stands in the witness box and tells a jury why he ridiculed and humiliated a student who was possibly dying of gangrene.
Interior Middleton High School classroom day. Before Mr. Weiland can respond.
Mr. Weiland, hey, Mr. W, I need the health room too for the same situation.
From what I recall, Rant only had maybe 2 shirts, both long sleeved to hide the messy teeth marks on his arms. His blue one had pearl snaps instead of buttons. You could hear when Casey got nervous because he'd snap and unsnap the cuffs. The outline of Rant's boner slung sideways in his jeans almost pulsing with his heartbeat, he went to the office, his shirt cuffs snapping loud and fast like popcorn.
The oldest female accused out of any class is claiming you have cramps. Nothing but code for chance to take a couple aspirin and skip the trigonometry midterm. Compared to that, a fella's got nothing.
Interior, interview room day.
Clear corollary form between the sunny weather and a number of boys suffering the painful penile erections. At issue wasn't penises, but the failure to occlude them while their turgid state. Furthermore, the district's legal counsel advised that the dress code requiring constraining, modest, and binding undergarments would be impossible to enforce and would serve the negative purpose of drawing more attention to the legal issue. Legal counsel advised on no direct condemnation of erections on school property. No district representative is to acknowledge or attempt to mask or resolve any obvious erections.
Interior, interview room day.
The biggest secret of Rant's life was his clothes.
Interior, Casey residence rants room day. The closet sits packed full, hangers packed tightly together, so heavy the rod holding them sags.
Trouble was, Irene Casey couldn't not be creative.
Interior, Casey residence afternoon. Irene embroiders with a frenzy, adding all kinds of flourishes onto Rant's clothing, sunflowers and ivy leaves, iron-on patches, and glitter paint.
Wouldn't hurt Rant's pride none to wear rainbow glitter and embroidery to high school, but he couldn't tolerate what kids said about his mom work. Kids saying she was a terrible artist, saying she had no kind of talent. He wasn't wearing his heart on his sleeve. It's more like she'd sewn her heart on Rant's sleeve. So he brung home 2 secondhand shirts and a pair of plain jeans and kept them hid in the barn, where he could change clothes on his way to or from school. He was double-trapped. If he wore the clothes his mom monkeyed with, he'd hear jokes about her until they broke his heart. But if Rant told her to lay off decorating his stuff, then he'd be breaking her heart.
Interior, Middleton High School classroom day.
Casey had the crowd of us whipped into a frantic, shouting equal rights for hard-ons, saying how we're oppressed and burning jock straps in the school parking lot.
Interior, Middleton High School lunchroom day. Students flock around Rant.
Rant advocating for us, our demands included therapeutic all-hours lunchroom since it's a known impossibility to eat food, maintain a Woody. We asked for nothing short of equal recognition of our biological...
Basin freezes.
But the next word stumped us. Should we say obstacles? Handicaps? Disabilities? This last word we tortured over.
The scene starts moving once again.
We settled on the word burden, asking for full and equal recognition of the burden inherent to the male anatomy, hearing how burden sounded fine and noble.
Not much in all his dry years of algebra had trained Mr. Weiland to deal with a potentially life-threatening emergency boner situation.
Well, we'd maybe talk to some doctor into calling it chronic boner syndrome.
This here's my inoculation against ever being embarrassed and humiliated in geometry. Ever again.
Had kids, polite like, raising their hands to say, "Beg pardon, Miss Harvey, I'd enjoy nothing more than diagramming that lovely sentence, but I'm suffering a chunk of pig iron so beet red it's starting to pain me. Cross my heart."
Interior, Middleton Teachers Lounge afternoon. Teachers all struggle to think of a solution.
If we were all talking about naturally strong boners, this would be another kettle of fish. But these were store-bought, chemically engineered woodies sprouted on purpose to disrupt this peaceful classroom environment.
Some kids would take a shoelace and tie it off. Other kids brung a cucumber. Trying off something full of blood could hurt, but nothing track of a cucumber took all your concentration. God forbid, but you'd see guys limping halfway to the bathroom for a readjustment, and a cucumber or zucchini squash slips outside of the cup of their jeans. Kids called them sportin', spootin', or stuffing.
Interior, Middleton High School Teachers Lounge day. Rand sits across the table from a slew of teachers.
History is a week into the spring term, and Rant sent down to negotiate our demands with the school board.
Interior, Middleton High School hallway day. Students gather outside the door to the Teachers Lounge.
Behind closed doors in the teacher's lounge, they talked while the rest of us waited in the hallway.
Teacher's lounge being off limits to us, nobody knowed it had an outside door. After our long butt sit in the hallway, the school administrators come out, but no Rant Casey.
The doors open and out comes the teachers. The students look into the room, seeing it's empty.
History is Rant skedaddled out that secret door, leads to outside, sidestepped us, took with him a check for $10,000 and a certificate saying he's graduated early.
No lie, Rant left us standing there with our boners, taking a political stand with our dicks on the line, and he goes kiting off, paycheck in hand from the school district. Folks is still brand him the boner Benedict Arnold.
Trusting Rant was our mistake. Rubber bands was a bigger mistake. Nothing hurts more than snipping a rubber band, snarled and tangled, all mangled up in your short hairs.
Interior, interview room day.
The trade-off gave Rand a new school record, awarding him a 4.0 GPA and top honors, plus a letter in every sport. Rant Casey never kicked a ball or ran a step in his life.
Interior, interview room day.
Paycheck at school graduation instead of just a diploma. Both them, just paper folks, agreed mean more. Being in agreement, the big step from a lie to reality. Rant saw how reality was something you could build. Same as the tooth fairy money. Enough folks believe a lie, how it ain't a lie no more.
Interior, interview room day.
Even all these years later, I'll discover Rant Casey got out of here, carved in a desk inside my classroom.
Interior, interview room day.
Sure, some folks never forgave Rant for his betraying us. Most guys, we just shrugged. We took the carrots out of our pants and got on with life.
Interior, interview room day.
We could only afford the plainest things, but I dressed them up with embroidery or rivets, and boys love lots of shiny chrome. Sometimes I'd sew on a special trim or rickrack. I know Buddy loved those clothes. He wore them to school and kept them so nice. The night he left home, Buddy packed up the lot of them and we're into the city. I was so proud.
Interior, interview room day.
It took the both of us to haul off Rant's clothes. The night before he left, he only pretended to pack them into his suitcase, got garbage bags and filled those instead, holding them just so. Then we walked out over the horizon, 3 horizons off from the Casey farm.
Exterior, Middleton Desert Fields, pre-sunrise. Rant stands looking out at the horizon. He carefully pulls one of the shirts from the bag and holds it up. He sparks a cigarette lighter.
Mom's masterpiece.
The shirts slowly burn brighter and brighter until Rand lets it go. Interior, interview room night.
First time you met Rant, first part you met was his teeth. Instead of chewing gum, him and his redneck friends used to pinch up clean tar from the country roads. In summer, black tar oozed from the cracks in the blacktop, and they used to chew it. Teeth they sold to the tooth fairy were pitch black.
Exterior, Middleton Desert Field night. Rant walks into the darkness.
Rant used to carry his radio out nights into the desert. He'd walk monkeying with the dials to pick up traffic reports from all around the world.
It's always rush hour somewhere.
Northbound on the 417 freeway at milepost 97, looking for a totally cherried Dodge Monaco. Word from the officer on the scene is the driver of the Donico apparently hit a slick patch and went sideways in the right lane. The driver was a 31-year-old female with the dicing injuries typical of the shattered safety glass.
Interior, car, night. Echo sits in the car with Rant, Schott, and Green Taylor Sims. Rant talks, but we don't hear the words.
On party crashing nights, Rant used to talk about leaving Middleton.
Rant's old suitcase he had was full of pulled a bustin' with tooth fairy money.
Smart Money says the marked TV was myocardial contusions and lacerations of the pericardial sac, but we can't quite confirm until the coroner opens him up at the morgue. I am Tina Something with your DRVE Rubberneck report every 10 minutes, or as the wrecks happen.
Exterior, Middleton Street, night. Chester and Rant sit on the curb waiting for the bus. After a moment,
I have a secret I needs to tell. No, you don't. You ain't got no secrets from me.
Chester stands up and toe kicks the suitcase.
You ain't never told me as much, but I knowed you're packing nothing but cash money here.
Future starts tomorrow, and Rant needs to say this before the bus pulls up. This moment, it's something his dad won't want to know. This here is the fact that starts a new future.
Rant slaps the bugs away from his neck.
Just so you know, I'm never getting hitched. Nah, you only figure that way to put a fright in me. As soon as you meet a girl named Echo Lawrence, you'll figure otherwise.
Look here, it's impossible Chester Casey could have known my name. We never met. At this point, I'd never heard of Middleton or Rant.
A few cars drive by, but Rant and Chester don't pay them any mind.
I'm meeting some girl? How you figure that? Same as I knowed an old man pulled up and talked to you before you come running about your Granny Esther. Old man in a Chrysler told you he was your for real pa. What model of Chrysler? Same as I knowed your Granny Esther screamed at the side of him, called him the devil, and told you to run.
Rant rubs at the bug bites on his neck.
Supposing that's the truth, what else did the old man tell me? That old man told you he was your real pa. He told you to come find him in the city as soon as you was able. That old man told you where to find all his cash money.
Rant spits black tar, which splatters off the ground and onto his suitcase. Rant shakes his head no.
That old man, he tell the truth about being your for real pa.
Don't ask for my feeling sorry. Your average city's nothing except different levels of pervert. Rand only told that story just to fit in. Him and Mr. Casey. They took more than their pissing matches a little more far than your average father and son.
You're only lying so I won't get homesick. In the city, you'll find your real pa and your grandpa. You'll discover your true nature. First thing, soon as you meet Echo Lawrence for the first time, you give her a big kiss for me. Let her know does her cholesterol taste too high.
Don't say I told, but Rant showed me a gold $20 coin his mama gave him for his going away, dated 1884. Mrs. Casey told how Chet Casey weren't Rant's real daddy, but she never tell how she had that coin and she gave him for good luck.
Chester bends down and gives Rand a loving peck on the head.
Tell Shot done you not to let his little bitty pug dog Sandy drink out of the toilet.
Another impossible piece of advice. Shot never met Chet Casey. Even I didn't know the name of Shot's little dog.
The bus begins to pull up from the end of the street.
Soon as you discover your true nature, you hightail it back to Middleton.
Rant climbs up the steps of the stopped bus.
How weird is this? But the last words Rant Old Man said to him?
Find the truth and hurry back. Maybe you can save your ma from getting attacked by that crazy, insane lunatic.
Rant looks puzzled.
Don't think about this any too hard. None of this is going to make sense until it's close to just about almost too late.
The bus begins to pull off.
It pains me I'll never put eyes on you again.
Exterior, Echo's closet, night. Echo stands in front of a small selection of clothes.
Every honeymoon night, I'd wear the same lucky veil. Different nights, I'd wear a long or short wedding dress. A night late in August, driving in a car with no air conditioning, I don't want to be wearing 1,000 layers of tulle with heavy silk on top of that.
Echo moves through, trying to find the perfect outfit.
You can't find the stick shift in all your petticoats. But wintertime, if you drive into a snowdrift, party crashing on icy streets, that same rule could save you from freezing to death.
The night in question.
Interior, car, night. Echo sits driving with green Taylor Sims, shotgun Yan, and Tina something, who keeps kicking the back of Echo's seat.
Turn here.
Echo pulls over.
Backseat drivers are bad enough, but from somebody riding left B, that's too much. An ass swipe, unass swipe acceptable.
Enough.
They stare at Tina.
Fine.
As she opens the door and gathers up her skirt.
Even boosting a little Becky beats being your slave.
Tina stomps out of the car and slams the door. Exterior, city street, night. The car sits there, shaking a bit, decorated with just mirrored across the back windshield and sides of the car. Cowbells and tin cans tied to the back bumper.
Those cans were a clear violation of the ICU noise limitations, but even daydreamers will cut slack for young marrieds.
Tina stomps up to a random man on the street and throws her bouquet into his face.
Hey, dude, catch.
The flowers bounce off the man's face and he catches them before they hit the ground.
He's quick. He's a quick guy, and we're short one lookout. How weird is that?
The shot leans out the window of the car.
You got gas money?
The man nods.
It just so happens that guy is Rant Casey.
Interior, car, night.
Listen up. Getting onto a car team is like the starting position in any sport. If it's an established team, you'll start on the lowest rung.
Rant sits behind the driver.
That's left B pillar lookout.
Shot sits next to Rant.
The number 3 position is right B pillar lookout.
Green sits shotgun.
Number 2 is riding shotgun in the front seat.
Echo is driving.
Being driver is the same as playing quarterback, center, pitcher, or goalie. The number 1 position, the glamour spot.
Interior, interview room, night.
My old car, I called her Cherry Bomb. She got scored into the goddamn junkyard, tagged to death. That happens, and chances are you'll start at the bottom position, behind the head of some other driver with her wheel still intact. Somebody like Echo Lawrence. Don't think I hate Echo. It's just that she lies. Ask Echo what she does for a living. If she tells you anything except sex work, it's a lie.
Interior, car, night. Echo drives, the car and passengers functioning like a well-oiled machine.
Pay attention. Tag teams are crews put together on the street. A shark, a lone driver needing a team for help or protection or company. He'll cruise around before the window opens, looking to draft players off the curb. If you don't have a car, you just stand on the corner with your thumb out.
Exterior, city side streets, night. A car pulls over to a man with his thumb out.
You playing?
What you got open?
Still need a left beat pillar lookout. You got gas money?
Having gas money isn't a must, but it shows your level of commitment.
Interior, car, night. Echo drives through the night.
The window is the determined time that the game begins. Until the time it ends, you might have a Saturday 4-hour window, or you might play a Monday all-night window from 8 to 8.
The night we met Rant, he'd escaped some voucher hotel, waiting for assignment to transitional nighttime housing.
Rant hands shot a quarter.
Well, how lame is that? An asswipe quarter for gas money.
Except the coin is gold and dated 1887. Green twists back to look at the shop. Look at shop.
Might I have a closer look at that coin?
You're not just looking for cars to hit. You're looking for cars headed to hit you. You're looking for cars already on someone's tail. You're looking for the police, not just during a chase, but all the time, parked or baiting or trolling or stalking.
Exterior, City Street, night. A pristine car, fresh off the showroom floor, drives down the boulevard.
Baiting means taking something cherry like that, driving around, just begging to get hit. And you'd be a fool to chase after one, not to say that rookies don't.
Lions and tigers and bears, oh my! Whatever your team mascot, be on the lookout for a flood of soccer fans this evening. At the post circle, watch out for a 6-car pileup.
Next time you come across a bad pileup, look forward enough, fast enough, and you might see the bait car, still cherry red, disappearing around a side corner, way up ahead.
Interior, interview room, night.
That kind of light tagging, we'll call that flirting. And if you nudge someone's rear and they look like you drive away and he comes out after you. Your average person will party crash so she can be around other people. It's very social, a way to meet new people. And you sit around telling stories for a few hours. But even party crashing can get boring if you can't find another team flying the designated flag. But at least it's communal boredom, like a family.
Interior car, night. Echo keeps driving.
Party crashing appeals primarily to people too poor or too rich to be engaged in the middle-class pursuit of monetary success. Mr. Dunyan and Miss Lawrence didn't consider they had anything to lose.
We're not 2 bullshit blocks before.
The car jerks forward, having been hit from behind.
A shark's bitten paint deep into our 7 o'clock.
Rant whips around.
Fella hit us. He hit us.
Why'd you let him? Mind your field, fucking quadrant.
With all this chaos going on, Green just keeps eyeing the coin.
Where did you acquire this extraordinary coin?
Echo hits the gas and rockets down the next street.
The full moon is the best night for starters. The flag is easy to spot. You just write, just married, somewhere in your car and shaving cream. Starter team is out $10 tops to get in the game.
The chase is on as Echo leads this shark in a wild game of cat and mouse.
Any honeymoon night, you'll see another just married car every block. Brides on street corners looking for loose grooms. Grooms wait on curbs, hoping to wave down a bride with their own wheels.
A crucial aspect of dressing for any honeymoon night is to fasten your boutonniere with a portion of double-stick adhesive tape. In the event of a car crash, you do not want a long, straight pin stuck anywhere adjacent to your heart.
Interior, interview room, night.
Another piece of advice, Scotch guard your seats. Before Tina something, we had a newbie lookout in the back seat during the pulse. A shark plows into us so hard we're spun sideways, and this newbie lookout takes a leak. Damage from the tag was nothing Bondo won't fill. But we were sporting that girl's piss out of the back seat for weeks.
Exterior, city streets, night. The shark is still chasing Echo. The shark, driving a Maserati, tags the side door of Echo's car before rolling down his window. This is Karl Waxman. Next to him sits a familiar face, Tina something, with a big shit-eating grin.
Why is he after us?
Exterior, city streets, night. Crashed cars are parked on the shoulder as the teams stand outside, yelling and arguing.
After you're tagged out, they all fake anger, fake screaming, pop-eyed, fake fighting for the people to slow down and watch. The rubberneck effect. The police never stop. Not for a fender bender. The wedding parties, they're just trying to milk out the moment their life gets slow. The pulse, when 2 cars come together, a swerve and black tire marks. One car darts after another so fast the tin cans stop touching the road. One red light, and that's the moment time explodes. What automotive crash test engineers called the pulse.
The great consensus in modern society is our traffic system, the way a flood of strangers can interact, sharing a path, almost all of them traveling without incident. It only takes one dissenting driver to create anarchy.
That moment, time slows down. All the 100 years of every boring day, they explode to fill that half moment, that pulse. Here's time squeezed down until it explodes into a slow motion moment that will last for years.
Exterior, city streets, night. Wax and Tina are still hot on Echo's trail. Echo is barely staying clear for long as Wax runs into them again. Rant leans forward and pats Brenda on the shoulder.
Oh, by the way, congratulations.
What?
Rant looks confused.
In addition, insisting that the journey is always a means to some greater end and the excitement and danger of the journey should be minimized, perpetuating the fallacy that a journey itself is of little value.
Tina and Wax bump them again.
You got married.
New team at 2:00.
Find me a hole. I'm going to blind that bitch with a handful of raw rice if I have to.
The activity casually referred to as party crashing rejects the idea that driving time is something to be suffered in order to achieve a more useful and fulfilling activity.
For the next goddamn police impound auction, I'll be bidding against Echo. In less than one odometer click, we'll both need new wheels.
Suddenly, Wax drops back before jerking forward. The back of his car has been crashed into. Tina slams into the headrest and gets a veil burn across her face. Echo pitches around a corner into a dark alleyway. She parts her veil to get a good look at Rant.
Get your dog boy ass out of my car.
Green offers her the coin.
Do you know what this is worth?
Rant touches the back seat and sniffs his fingers.
That girl who peed 3, maybe 4 weeks back, she ate bell peppers that day.
Everyone looks at him confused as Rant smiles at a tar black grin.
Hey, any of you folks know a fella by the name of Chester Casey?
Interior, interview room, night.
The poet Oscar Wilde wrote, "Each man kills the thing he loves. Each man except the smart ones, the ones who don't want to serve time in prison. The smart men used to hire Karl Waxman."
Exterior, city streets, an hour ago. Tina stands on the corner looking pissed. The Maserati pulls up next to her and rolls down the window. Wax waves something floppy and white at Tina. Latex gloves. Before you touch anything, baby, you put on these. Interior, interview room, night.
As per my investigation, nobody's 100% sure who runs party crashing, but it can't be a single individual. That guy would have to keep track of fouls for every player. Anybody calls 3 fouls on you inside of 2 months, you stop getting notified about the next game. Fouls include tagging too hard, and that's only 1 foul you can call.
Exterior, city streets, an hour ago. Tina steps into the car as Wax takes the steering wheel. Nice. They sprung for the heated steering wheel. Wax drops the car into the gear and speeds off.
In party crash culture, Karl Waxman was known as a hitman, a species of paid assassin. People hire a hitman to demonstrate their love for a particular vehicle. An owner might want a Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud destroyed, but said owner could never by his own hand defile such a beautiful automobile.
Interior, interview room, night.
Some other things, Waxman would accept payment for disposing of luxury cars. Typically cars that are about to be lost in a messy divorce, or they can't or they can't afford to make payments on it, or simple insurance fraud. Or spite. They tell them where to find the vehicle and they leave town, alibi. And Waxman would show up and joyride. By the time they get back and report it stolen, Waxman has ditched it somewhere. It won't be found.
Exterior, city streets, night. Wax cuts through the streets, having just been slammed away from Echo.
Other fouls you could call include tagging off limited areas of the target. No T-boning, no angling to grab anywhere on the sidewalks between the front and rear axles.
Interior, interview room, night.
Way I figure it, the head individual in party crashing would have to tally fouls. Plus, keep track of teams by their license plate. Plus, the name of the flag and window for each game. And yeah, notify all the players about the upcoming event. That's only one guy. Safe bet he's pretty damn busy. Not just some thug. He need to be pretty damn bright.
Exterior, Madison Street boat ramp night. Wax and Tina sit with the car at the boat ramp, smoke drifting from the cracked hood. Tina heads back a ways as Wax puts a car into first and turns on the car alarm. But the car is too broken to make any noise. The light flashed silently. The car rolls down the ramp into the black water.
Like watching an ocean liner sink, the Titanic. That trash relic of somebody's dream would keep wailing, flaring, fainter and fading until it settled on some secret mountain of the wrecked dreams, Jaguars and Celines and or Corvettes the people hired Wax to murder.
Interior, interview room night.
My statement for the record, Buster Landrew Casey, aka Rant Casey, did contact me via the telephone and did arrange an appointment to discuss my services toward locating a missing biological father. At the time, I informed the potential client my base fee was $1,000 a week, plus expenses. Said potential client assured me the expense would not be an issue. He promised not to tell. Another thing Rant Casey told me, oh wait, that's somebody else. Sorry, didn't mean to step on your line.
You stepped on your own line. That's still you, Chelsea.
I know, it's all right. It's all right. He stepped on my line. Anyway, if you promise not to tell, another thing Rant Casey told me was that the old man who told him about the coins, well, the stranger who drove up the road to nowhere said he was Rant's lost for real paw from the city.
Interior, interview room day.
Vermin control is not your chosen field for most, but Rant Casey took to it like a roach to cat food. The kid would crawl under houses into attics. Didn't matter if the job was vampire bats, snake, bats, rats, cockroaches, poison spiders. None of that made Rant break a sweat. Funny thing, but his physical exam could come back positive for rabies. No drugs or nothing. But he had rabies. The clinic took care of it and updated his tetanus shot. Only single problem I ever had with Rant Casey was every month or so, do we do random lunchbox checks? As the guys were headed home, we asked to look inside their lunchboxes. Our guys were alone in people's houses, sometimes with jewelry and valuables and sitting around. A random check keeps everybody in line. Never found Rant stealing diamonds, but once we popped open his lunchbox and the inside were crawling with spiders, black widow spiders he's supposed to be been killing that day. Brent says it's by accident, and I trust him. I mean, who'd smuggle home a nest of poison spiders?
Exterior, burger joint night. Rant stands outside the burger place with Shot and Green.
Hey, can you take my picture?
Rant hands a cheap disposable camera to Green and crosses to Shot. Rant puts an arm around Shot's shoulder.
Tell me when.
Oh,
sorry.
Tell me when.
Now.
Say cheeseburger.
Right as Green takes the photo, Rant grabs the back of Shot's head and pulls him into a big kiss while shoving his other hand down Shot's pants. The camera flashes and Rant pulls away like nothing happened. Shot is spitting, and Rant walks over and takes the camera back.
Thanks, man. My dad won't believe my bag's such a good-looking boyfriend.
Interior car night. Green drives. Shot rolls down the window and spits again.
Even if you give me rabies, I'm not your butt boy, especially if you give me rabies.
Shot smells the stink coming off of Rant.
And what is that stink?
Dimethylchloropropanoballicylic acid. Supposed to kill spiders.
The crew drives through the streets on the lookout for sharks.
So, you looking for a boyfriend?
Nah. Hell, I'd screw a German Shepherd if it make my folks love me less. Save them from pain. Part of my strategy, the worse my folks think of me, the less they'll hurt about me being gone.
Gentlemen, brace yourselves.
Green swerves and tags another car on the road. Shot looks back at Rant.
So, you queer or not? That's the night Green startled calling Rant Huckleberry Fairy.
Truth is, I won't ever be a doctor. Don't even ask me to do long division. I can't do much to make my folks proud. But if I get my folks' expectations low and pester them with the worry they mess me up, then just the simple miracle of me getting a girl in trouble, that'll bust them open with joy and relief.
Rant reaches into the front seat, adjusting the radio dial. Shot sees tires sizes written on the back of Rant's hands.
Been car shopping?
How good do you know Echo?
Good enough. Pretty good.
Figured maybe I'd get her a present.
Echo is off working tonight, doing some bullshit I don't want to explain. Complicated shit.
Rant sits back in the seat.
Now, really, truly, with her whole entire heart, does Echo hate somebody?
Don't you mean love?
Rant shrugs.
Ain't it the same thing?
Interior, interview room, night.
For sheer spectacle, the peak of party crash culture had to be tree nights, then oops nights, baby on board nights would be next. Just bolt a baby doll and carry her onto the roof of the car.
Exterior junkyard afternoon. A car is being auctioned off.
$40, drive $40. Come on, folks, it costs more to fill a gas tank. Do I have 30?
Echo's bent over the back of an old car, looking into the back seat. Rant looks under the hood.
Hey, whore.
Tina comes stomping up to Echo and Rant.
You. Stop calling bogus fools on me. You foul me out, and I'll phone fake shit on you.
Echo makes her way to the hood up with Rant, ignoring Tina.
Forget you. I don't even know your current plate. How do I call fouls on you if I don't know your plate?
Rant is now watching Echo, not the car.
Hey, day boy. You, with the black teeth. Day boy.
Rant looks up at her.
Has your girlfriend told you what she does for work? How she makes the cash she spends on wheels? Your girlfriend you like so much. She fucks for money. Your little girlfriend is a goddamn whore.
Echo turns to Tina and Rant just looks at her.
Is that true?
I got a bid of $22. Going once.
Echo pops her neck.
It's what, true?
Going twice.
What she said. Are you really my girlfriend?
Sold!
Interior interview room, day.
My wife and I hired Echo Lawrence after a dinner party, eh? A couple we knew had just given birth to their first child. The baby's needs kept interrupting dinner, and when the mother left, the father looked over and said, I'm glad we experimented with 3 ways before we started a family. And as we left the dinner party, Sarah and I were so far behind the curve. We're considering a child, but we never even tried anal. We never even discussed a 3-way. A few days later, we phoned the Tyson Neals and asked how they met a woman who considered intimacy with a couple. They knew a young lady who worked with no one except couples our age. Nighttime girl who'd be happy to come to our apartment after the curfew.
Interior interview room, day.
Forget it. The police never found the fucker that smashed into my family. The last I remember of my parents, we were driving. I was asleep across the back seat of that old gray car when someone smacked into us, head on.
Interior Mercer home, day. Sarah and Canada Mercer sit in their living room when the doorbell rings. Echo enters the house and the Mercers take notice right away of her withered arm and leg.
She would have been pretty if it hadn't been for a palsy or paralysis that seemed to leave the left side of her face slack and immobile. The poor dear. She'd come to the end of a sentence and seemingly struggled to get the last word out.
Interior Mercer home minutes later. Echo finishes a glass of wine.
All of these stem from a single brain injury caused when my mom struck me in the head.
Interior interview room, night.
I do. I tell people that. My mom did hit me. So did my dad. But not the way I let people imagine. Well, technically, I hit them.
Interior car crash, night. We see the crash Echo mentioned earlier. Little Echo rockets out from the backseat and slams into the back of both her parents' heads.
The officer at the scene never put this on paper, but I broke both their necks.
We see the whole crash play out in slow motion.
My head slammed against my father's so hard it compressed my right temporal lobe. The tiny arm I have is now the arm I had when I was 8. My legs grown a little. The aphasia, when I struggle for words, that's a little put on. I'll pretend the last word in a sentence is almost choking me to... And I'll pause. Death. Like I can't quite force out the right word. That tension makes people really listen to me.
The car rolls and over and comes to a stop in the ditch.
The car that hit us was another gray sedan, exactly like the one my mother drove. A head-on collision, and they never found the other driver. Sounds... wait for the word. Fishy.
Interior, Mercer home night. The Mercers sit at the dinner table with Echo.
The subject of a venereal disease came up and she insisted it wasn't a problem.
Sex workers regularly perform oral sex as a part of foreplay. It's not for pleasure. It's part of the test for it's to test the client for illness. Syphilis tastes like curried chicken. Hepatitis tastes like veal with capers. Gonorrhea tastes like sour cream and onion chips. HIV like buttered popcorn.
Echo looks at Sarah.
Let me lick your pussy and I can tell if you've been exposed to venereal warts and if you're at risk for cervical cancer. Most forms of cancer taste like tartar sauce.
Interior, interview room night.
As an adult, even riding the bus made my hands sweat. Riding in a taxi, I could barely catch my breath. And I'd get that close to fainting, and I'd be rammed up by another car. It got so bad I couldn't cross the street for fear that a driver might run the red. My world kept collapsing down, getting smaller and smaller.
Interior, Mercer home night. Echo pulls her large black shoulder bag up onto the table and starts to unpack it. She flops onto the table several large toys, pink and black rubber, smudged and stained, an enema bag, what looks like jumper cables.
She called those ones tick clamps. Everything reached to chlorine bleach.
When Echo finishes unloading the bag, she looks at the couple.
You can do any of these things to me.
Interior, interview room night.
My routine, the whole tasting people for hepatitis or gonad warts. I was saying that long before I met Rant Casey. The fact that he could actually do that, it was unfucking believable. He licked me one time and told me to lay off eating whole eggs. From the taste of my pussy, he said my cholesterol was too high. Later, my blood work came back and he was dead on.
Interior, Mercer home night. Then Echo pulls out a thick white candle and lights it.
You can pour wax on me. I don't want you to torture me just because you feel sorry for me. I want you to enjoy hurting me. I want tonight to be about you. I despise pity S&M.
Interior, interview room night.
I realized the ideal therapy for me. If I could stage an accident and survive it, then I might start to get past my fear. If I could just bump my car into another and cause a fender bender, then I'd see the fatality accidents were so rare, they're not worth the worry. So I started stalking other drivers, looking for the perfect car. Perfect accident. Just one. Perfect controlled accident. The role reversal helped my nerves. Instead of waiting to be killed by another reckless driver, I'd become the predator, the hunter. I can't count the number of people I shadowed, trying to decide if I should plow into their car.
Interior, interview room day.
No, we never did have a three-way. The girl never even took off her coat.
Interior, Mercer home day. Canada walks inside and sees Sarah sitting at the kitchen table with Echo, drinking tea.
We paid her $200 cash to drink tea for an hour. Sarah kept telling her how pretty she looked. Next week, came home to find her washing the girl's hair in the sink. Sarah gave her a permanent wave with blonde highlights, paid $200 for each of the 3 hours it took.
Interior, interview room day.
If Sarah could boost her self-esteem, we hoped the girl would find a new career. Talking to her, praising her, we lost track of our plan to have a child of her own. The girl cost too much and took up so much of our free time, I couldn't even afford to buy a dog. To this day, we still see her every week. I think we're making headway.
Interior, car night. Echo drives through the night. She sees a car driving through the streets, a dead deer tied to the roof of his car.
Some fucking Bambi killer. You don't lose sight of someone like that easily. So I kept my distance, looking for the perfect spot to nail his killer ass. Somewhere an accident won't block traffic or endanger bystanders.
Interior interview room day.
Called the Tyson Neals, and they admitted to never having sex with this girl either. The reason they decided to have a child was it penciled out a cheaper than seen echo every week.
Exterior city streets night. Echo stalks after the deer hunter. She skirts through a yellow light and rounds the corner after him. She draws close, closes her eyes, and kablam! Echo collides with the car and so hard, the deer comes flying off the roof. The deer hits her car and busts open, but not into blood and guts. It breaks into a big white pieces. The deer hunter jumps out of the car and looks at Echo behind the wheel.
Your fucking deer. It's fake?
Of course it's fake.
It's styrofoam?
Where's your damn flag? You better believe I'm calling fouls on you. No flag, way too much impact. Multiple fouls.
We never did get around to experimenting with bondage or police uniforms. For Christmas, we asked Echo what she wanted Santa Claus to bring her. She told us a fisting dildo. Instead, we chipped in with the Tyson Neals and a few other couples and bought her a car. Seems she's a terrible driver, though.
Those fucking blonde highlights. I couldn't wait for those to grow out.
To this day, I still have no appetite whatsoever for that tartar sauce.
Interior interview night.
For myself personally, my reason for participating in party crash events is quite simple. I hold my life as precious. I consider myself enormously gifted with good fortune, but accidents do happen. Another driver on the road, his clogged heart fails and he veers off, colliding with my car, forcing us over a cliff. Despite my lifetime of declining rich desserts, my evenings spent jogging, all of that and I'd be trapped, wadded inside a shell of steel and aluminum. Despite all my care, the heart attack victim and I will both be just as dead. Echo Lawrence came to party crashing to help resolve her personal history. Mr. Dunyan to experience an actual event instead of only watching from the sidelines. And I'd speculate that Rant Casey simply enjoys being among other human beings.
Interior Casey residence. Morning. Irene sits at the kitchen table, opening up a card from Rant. She sees a photo inside. Rant kissing shot.
Bodie wrote us that he was working for a big exterminator and he had his own apartment. He wrote about going to the dentist. Girl he met who was teaching him yoga. Girl, thank God. We wrote back to say Cammy Elliot had asked after him at church. She just got her last round of rabies shots. In case he got hungry with his new friends, I sent him a batch of fudge. Kind he likes best. With plenty of chopped walnuts and thumbtacks. What?
According to our records, Buster Casey made a single visit to our office. I have one hygienist who still talks about his teeth. The worst stains she's ever seen. Mr. Casey was referred by a longtime patient, a favorite among the office staff, a young man named Karl Waxman.
Interior interview room night.
Yeah, I wanted Rant to do yoga before party crashing. Everybody should. Just stay limber and avoid getting hurt. Yoga and stretching. I showed him the down dog pose and the rabbit. We were practicing the archer when he asked me about the hitman Tina something goes around with. Her boyfriend, Waxman. Rant really admired that asshole's teeth.
I don't give a goddamn what the police say. Wax did not kill that hillbilly.
Interior interview room night.
Long before modern party crashing, the traffic engineers were running each other down. Those pool car boys loved to hunt each other. Those gray pool sedans were so easy to find. With full coverage, health insurance, driving a car not their own, with complete permission and encouragement to crash, and getting paid overtime wages to boot, the infrastructure teams treasured their work.
Interior interview room night.
Our firm was able to locate one likely candidate who fit the client's vague description for a biological father, an individual by the name of Charles Casey. That's the good news. That Charles Casey, aka Charlie, attained night-timer status and housing under the ICU recruitment program. Bad news is, the Charles Casey we found has been missing and presumed dead for almost 16 years. He's been a traffic flow engineer for the city and died in a work-related car accident. Seems he requisitioned a car from the department motor pool, then ran it head on into another car, driven by a female coworker. That woman and her husband were both killed. Her daughter, who'd been asleep in the back seat of their vehicle, was left handicapped by the accident. Charles Casey's body was not recovered at the scene. The couple he killed, names were Larry and Suprema Lawrence. Whoa.
Interior, Casey residence day. Irene looks through the photos Rant sent. One of them is Rant with Echo, who's holding a baseball bat-sized sex toy.
A girl like that with a gimp arm holding herself a dirty big man thingy. It's a stretch to see that girl as a mama of my future grandbaby.
Strange as it sounds, emergency service personnel continue to channel Tina something the gory details of each drive time accident. Everyone with a government letterhead will deny this, but it's true.
Interior, interview room night.
It's all connected. The ICU Act, team slamming, night versus day, graphic traffic. Our tax money was the springboard for what eventually became the party crashing culture. The pool car boys, those unsung engineers, their study recommendations split this country into day and night. And they brought us the #1 rated daytime radio program in this market.
Interior, interview room night.
Yes. Fuck yes. The name on my dad's tombstone is Lawrence Lawrence. That's not funny. But Waxman did kill Rant. Sure, he's got gray teeth, but the man's evil.
Beyond evil.
Interior, interview room night.
The minute Rant comes to me asking what model car has the biggest back seat, I could tell where he was headed. My advice was, I told him to get a car with dark upholstery.
Interior car night. Rand and Echo sit in the back seat. Echo looks to Rant.
What do you really want from me? Do you plan to go around with me and then take me home as fugly club to beat your parents with? Is dating a deformed cripple the last act of teenage rebellion? Or am I some kind of erotic fantasy? Or am I just the only girl you know in here in this big, bad city? Is sex your way of clinging to me because you're too afraid to be alone in this scary new world?
Rant just looks at her. After a long beat.
What'd you eat for breakfast yesterday?
Yesterday? Cereal. No, wait. French toast. No, cinnamon toast.
Rant slides across the seat until their fingers are touching. He lifts her hand and sniffs.
Wrong. Yesterday you had rolled oat granola with maple sugar and pumpkin seeds, vanilla yogurt, and dried cranberries.
And of course, he's dead on.
Rant lifts her hand towards her nose.
Smell.
I smell nothing but my skin, my soap, and the plastic smell of my old nail polish. Smell of old insecticide.
Rant leans in and smells her hair.
What was for supper 2 nights ago?
He gently licks her neck.
Turkey lasagna?
Rant whispers into her ear.
Taco salad. White onions, not yellow or red. Shredded iceberg lettuce. Ground chicken.
My nipple's already getting hard. I ask, light or dark meat?
Rant leans in and kisses her eyelid.
You should throw out those roses.
Rant never had been to my apartment. Back then, he didn't even know where I lived.
She looks at him.
What roses?
Were they from a boyfriend?
What color are they?
Were they from a girlfriend?
Are you stalking me?
Pink.
He kisses her forehead. He keeps kissing her.
2 dozen Nancy Reagan roses mixed with baby's breath and white little bitty carnations.
They were a gift from a nice middle-aged couple I sometimes work for.
Rant leans in and kisses her deeply.
Rant tells me my shower head is brass instead of chrome. From the smell and taste of me, he says I sleep on a goose down pillow. I have coconut-scented candle that I've never lighted.
Interior, interview room day.
The only occasion I entered Mr. Casey's apartment was with our standard 24-hour notice to enter premises. Rumor was he kept pets. My first look around, I didn't see nothing. A mattress on the floor, a telephone message machine, a suitcase. In his closet hanging are those blue coverings. Clean or dirty, Casey smelled like poison. If somebody says I took anything, there was nothing to take.
Interior car night. Echo and Rant keep kissing.
I didn't let Rant kiss me because he smelled my food. I kissed him because after seeing how gentle he treated his huge, fugly spider.
Rant pulls back and unzips the top pocket of his coat and reaches a hand inside. He opens his fingers and pulls out a large spider. Echo looks at it.
Is it poisonous?
The spider lowers itself onto the skin of Rant's hand.
I call her Doris.
Interior, interview room day.
It's there in the back of Casey's closet. Lined up on the floor, I find the jars. Different sizes of mayonnaise and pickle and spaghetti sauce jars, clear glass and washed out. At first they looked empty, but I unscrew one lid. There's nothing inside. But when I go to put the lid back, on the underneath of each lid sits a huge black spider. No matter what anybody says, I didn't take anything. Not money or anything.
Interior car night. Echo and Rant sit in the back seat, looking at the spider. The spider bites him and Rant exhales.
Roll down the window.
Echo rolls it down and Rant holds out his hand, gently shaking the spider into the bushes next to the car.
Not Dory.
She looks down, already seeing the effects of the spider's venom. Interior, interview room night.
About the same time the Casey kid was selling coins, I met Lewis Terry. Terry used to bring me a few good specimens. If I recall, a 1910 Indian head quarter in extremely fine condition, a 1907 Liberty head in AU 50 condition. Nothing spectacular, but I bought them. It wasn't until the police interviewed me that I found out Terry and Casey lived in the same apartment house.
Interior, car night. Rant kisses down Echo's throat.
What kind of birth control am I on?
None. You had your period 34? Nope. 36 hours ago. Sad. How would a virgin use birth control?
Interior, interview room night.
One night in my shop, this Terry character offers me the Liberty head and the Indian head and tells me he needs to see $1,500 out of the deal. Fucking nightmares.
Interior, interview room night.
Of course I was a virgin. With a twisted branch of an arm, half the time I couldn't tell, but I'd be drooling out of the corner of my mouth, the palsy side. With my job, I'd made the cottage fucking industry out of being as unappealing as possible. Do you think I could just vamp it up, snap my fingers, and I'd go from sideshow freak to sex kitten?
Interior, interview room night.
Time passed, and the Casey kid would turn up with lesser and lesser coins, buffalo nickels, wheat pennies. Nothing worth remembering. The stash had to be running low.
Interior, interview room night.
The next night, Rant sent me 24 red fucking roses and the keys to Galaxy 500.
Interior, interview room day.
The only other detail I remember from Casey's apartment. Stuck on the wall next to his bed, I found all these little lumps. Round and dark like bugs. Soft like little balls of hashish. Except they didn't taste like it.
Interior, interview room night.
Our first night alone in the El Dorado, all I could think was, thank God the leather seats were dark burgundy.
Interior, interview room night.
Before the attack, I used to have beautiful feet. Bernie was working the door that night. It's horrible what happened. Them tearing him apart the way they did before the cops came around.
Interior, strip club night. Vivica Brawley dances on the stage.
One of my regulars, this balding night timer. He doesn't look good. He's just sitting there on the edge of the stage, drool running down his chin. The rule says no touching, but he reaches out a $5 bill like he's gonna slip it between my toes.
Interior, interview room night. Vivica holds up her foot, the end mangled but healed.
Right here where my 3 little toes should be. That's how much he crammed into his mouth.
Interior dance club night. The jeweler has shoved her whole foot into his mouth and is biting into it. Vivica screams silently as Bernie comes up behind him and grabs his shoulder, spinning him around. There's an audible click as the jeweler's teeth come together and Vivica pulls back at her bleeding foot. The jeweler then lunges forward and digs his teeth into Bernie's neck. Interior interview room.
At that point, every jeweler and perv in the place pile onto him. Bernie's just bellowing for help.
Interior interview room day.
Depends on if you believe that deformed girl or you believe the police. For the first night together was the same night Betty was supposed to have killed that lady. The one who owned the little pet store, that Libby woman.
Interview room night.
Yeah, Edith Libby, the victim, was 5'3", 128 pounds. Her body was discovered during the morning curfew sweep in the area bordering both nightimer and daytimer districts. Cause of death wasn't readily apparent, nor were any injuries evident. The location in question was not surveyed by the existing system of street cameras.
Interior interview room night.
You study any pretty democracy from the ancient Greeks forward, and you'll see that the only way each system functions is with a working class of slaves. Peons to haul the garbage so the upper crust can campaign and vote. Night timers became that, an effective and efficient method to sweep the slave class out of sight. Forgive me, but after 2 decades of reporting on local politics, I guess I've earned the right to finally tell the truth. The truth is, no night timer has ever been elected president.
Interior interview room night.
Yeah, Wade Morrison was another story. Age 24, born night timer. Middle of one night, he collapsed. Just as dead as the Libby victim. Granted, we weren't treating these deaths as homicides per se. Not until they began forming a pattern.
Interior interview room night.
Hey, go ahead, call it a social contract. Like speed limits or building codes, but it's all still living on the graveyard shift. 1 clock tick past the curfew and you'll find out just how equal you are. Fallback argument is that night timers can always leave an urban area and live in a rural district not subject to the ICU Act. That takes money. Plus, the majority of jobs and education opportunities are in the city.
Interior interview room night.
So with the Morrison killing, we had a testimony that the victim had been subject to mood swings and aggressive outbursts. In a typical outburst, the deceased had been denied services by a daytimer after the morning curfew. When Morrison turned out to be a nightimer, the daytime clerk refused to sell him cigarettes, and witnesses report Morrison made verbal threats and left the store. The third victim died in the same manner as the first two. An autopsy turned up encephalitis and myelitis of the brain, including negri bodies in the pyramidal cells of the hippocampus and Pujunki cells in the cerebellum. The short and sweet version of that is, well, rabies. All 3 of these victims died of undiagnosed, untreated rabies. According to the CDC, the most recently diagnosed case of rabies in the area was a 26-year-old male named Christopher Dunyan. During a preliminary investigation, that the 4th victim collapsed and died of previously undiagnosed rabies-related encephalitis. Our fear was the disease might be spreading exponentially. We could be looking at 100 or 10,000 people unaware they've even been infected.
Well, it could have been an earthquake that got Rant Casey, or fire, or a bullshit strain of some killer flu. It's comforting to know, after all the party crashing accidents I survived, that the day I finally meet death, the 2 of us will be old, long-lost friends, me and death, separated at birth.
Interior interview room night.
Like, how weird is this? The night I got out with Rant Casey, we waste our whole window mercy crashing.
Interior interview room night.
The night in question, our last together, was a mattress night. Foremost in my memory of the evening is Rant Casey unbuttoning his blue shirt, and his chest was riddled with hundreds of extra nipples, countless raised round welts.
Hobo spiders. Found some at work.
He had tried to smuggle them home by dropping them inside his open collar.
He'd be smashing into some clunker out of pity or desperation. That's what we call mercy crashing.
Interior interview room night.
Come on, Dunya and Mazal, don't mix with Rant, don't fall in love. Dunya kept tugging me aside, all rabies. I'd let Rant ride in my backseat for months. Check this out. Rant was such a romantic. It's one thing to buy a girl roses that she can watch wilt and rot. It's much nicer to give a girl a fully equipped Skylark she can total. One honeymoon night, my sweetheart handed me the keys to a Lincoln Continental with the power everything, a very solid set of wheels. The ride so smooth at some point a Jetta rammed into us from behind, hooked its bumper under our rear bumper, and we didn't even notice. We drove around half the game dragging this little car full of angry people.
Interior interview room night.
Well, now, how bullshit is this? In mercy crashing, the second you pull your bumper out of some pockmarked, saggy, rusted rear end, you regret not just going home without making any tag. You just nail and bail.
Interior interview room night.
Let me think. Rant bought me a LeSabre I couldn't total fast enough. He bought me a Cavalier that I rammed into the back of someone's Audi. And then he bought me a Regal that I swerved into the trash and the side of a Taurus. No, wait, there was a Grand Am in there somewhere. A Grand Am and a Cougar and a Grand Marquis. Oh, and the LeBaron that we caught on fire, trying to eat the fondue during one game. Maybe that car shouldn't count.
Exterior city streets night. Rant sits shut as Echo sits at a red light. A shot in the back seat. A crappy car shivers up behind them. Light goes green, and the dying monster crawls towards Shot's bumper.
Wait.
Young Rant was committing the most kind and gracious act of generosity.
The lights turn red again. They sit still while the dying car still crawls towards them. A beat after the car nudges Echo's car, it dies. The driver of the dead car steps out. It's Nettie Nelson. Rant leans out the window.
Hey, we need a mascot.
Interior interview room night.
You know how great Rant was? You know what he did when they dropped me off at my building just before curfew? Anybody tell you Rant flips me a gold coin saying,
For your next wheels.
Can you imagine my surprise when the coin shop owner offers me 10 grand for that 1884 Liberty Head dollar? Was there ever a guy so generous? Without Rant Casey, you think I'd be driving another car so soon?
That, I believe, was the squandered remainder of Rant Casey's tooth fairy fortune.
When Shot said rabies, I thought he said babies. The results came back negative, thank God, but I think I asked for the wrong test.
Exterior city streets dusk. The city seems quiet as the changeover from day to night.
Following enormous deliberation, we chose to use a real one. We decided on a noble fur.
The Cadillac Seville is covered in blue lights and crowned with a glowing blue star. Fastened lengthwise along the roof, the tree resembled a blue comet, the big star bobbing above the windshield, trailing hundreds of dazzling blue sparks behind it.
Do you think I'm an idiot if I say the best part of a party crashing is that it feels like a factory reset? Isn't party crashing like an electroshock therapy for your depression?
The Cadillac drives by, trailing blue lights.
The only other occasion I entered Casey's apartment was one day I go down to the basement to clean out the recycling bins, and dump there in the clear glass bin is those jars I see in his closet, only empty. The company Casey worked, they said he'd quit. He wasn't killing bugs as much as he was relocating. Seeing how this was a vermin issue, I'm allowed to use my passkey and take a look.
Interior, Rant's apartment, afternoon. Lou Terry enters the apartment and it's empty. And the only thing he notices is an empty suitcase and those dark lumps above the bed. He looks closely at the suitcase and sees a plain white egg perched on the top.
If anybody's saying I took that egg, it was the police detectives who took it. Since then, the county threatens to fine us. We have so many poison spiders. The crazy bastard must have set loose his whole friggin' collection.
Interior, Cadillac 7, night. The team drives through the city. They see dozens of cars covered in Christmas decorations and several folks on the street dressed like Santa, clearly trying to find a team. They drive past a street corner and Shot notices a Santa flashing her poops at them in order to get their attention. Echo looks down at the clock, which clicks over to 9. All of the cars on the streets flip their Christmas lights off and separate, getting in last-minute pit stops. Shot looks at Rant.
No mistletoe, no kissing, no rabies.
They pull over at a gas station to fuel up. Rant gets out and starts pumping gas. Exterior, gas station, night. Echo, Shot, and Green head inside.
You want anything?
Pork rinds and root beer.
Corn dogs with mustard for me. Ooh, and some microwave nachos.
My weakness, I confess, is for red vines licorice.
And beef jerky.
I swear, Mr. Dunyan, I'm glad we seldom drive the same car for more than 3 weeks. Nacho cheese can destroy resale value faster than any rollover accident.
Shot fakes a chortle and the three of them head inside. Rant looks from his friends to the gas pump in his hands. Exterior, gas station. Minutes later, a Shot walks out of the mini-mart, nachos in hand, munching on a corn dog, and after a beat, he realizes that Rant and the Cadillac are gone. The Shot hurries to the curb and sees it tearing off down the street, lights blazing. Rant immediately runs a red light and a police cruiser kicks on its light, giving chase. One by one, cars come out from the woodwork to try and tag him. Echo walks out of the mini-mart and sees Rant gone and Shot on the curb.
Ugh, fuck me.
Echo rushes to the street and flags down the nearest passing game car. One stops and she opens the back door, jumping inside.
Go.
Interior, stoner car, night. The car takes off, but clearly can't see Rant.
There.
Echo reaches up and turns on the radio, looking for the right channel.
To give you an update on that police pursuit, at the Highland interchange, we had a vigilante car driven by a private citizen cut in from the side street and tied to the ram of the blue Christmas tree. 'Tis the season, I guess. For DRVR graphic traffic, this is Tina something.
Exterior, gas station, night. Green comes up behind Shot and hails a cab. He jumps into one, leaving Shot behind, holding all the snacks.
Oh, the blue Christmas tree.
Interior, interview room, night.
My car, we'd park at pump 3. That man, Casey, at pump 7, he yanked that gas nozzle from his car. It was no accident. He holds the Christmas tree on top of his car, soaked every branch, had gas just dripping off his rocker panels.
What? Exterior, city streets, night. The Cadillac is driving down the parkway, getting tagged by at least 6 cars. A police helicopter sweeps over the top of the chase. After a block or two, there's a small wave of cars gathering behind the Cadillac, players and police.
There's worse ways to be dead than dying.
Interior, stoner car, night. Echo listens closely to the radio.
What started as an attempt traffic stop for failure to obey a red light has snowballed into one of this city's most dramatic police standoffs. More on this continuing story as it happens. This is Tina something for DRVR radiographic traffic.
Exterior, city streets, night. Several players' cars sideswipe and rear-end Rant in the Cadillac. Several officers driving among the crowd protest silently from their cars.
If you'll ponder the thought, no one ever closes a thoroughfare due to the death of an individual. Death is a tragic event, but stopping the flow of traffic is always seen as the greater crime.
Interior, Cadillac, settle, night. Rant drives.
All of my automobile accidents have felt similar, like swimming through amber or honey. A moment unspools for years, time almost stops. Time gels or freezes until you can recall every moment of every moment, the way Rant could taste your entire life in any single kiss.
Another car's into the bumper of the Cadillac.
Common to almost all spiritual beliefs is the idea of liminal time. The moment is different for each religion or spiritual practice, but liminal time itself represents a moment in which time stops passing. The actual definition is a moment outside of time.
Another car hits the Cadillac as police starts to fire at him. One bullet sparks off the roof and ignites the Christmas tree, turning the car into a speeding, blazing bonfire, trailing blue smoke and sparks. Rant, almost unbothered, grabs the built-in car phone. Interior, stoner car night. Echo listens as the car joins the back of the swarm.
Here in the newsroom, we've confirmed the telephone call from the driver of the burning Cadillac, and producers are patching the driver through. Do we still have the line patched? Do we still have reception?
It's funny what you remember about a person. But every time Rant had an orgasm, or at the moment after we'd been rammed by another team, right when he blinked his eyes and seemed to realize he wasn't dead, he'd smile and say the same thing. At that moment, Rant would always smile, all dopey, and say, "This is what church should feel like."
Exterior, city streets night. Another car manages to clip the back end of the Cadillac and it flips, end over end, burning a trail down the street. The swarm peels off, all except for the police and Echo at the back.
If we're lucky, the next voice you should hear should be that of the unidentified driver.
Interior, stoner car night.
I love you, Echo Lawrence, but I gotta try and save my mom.
Tears well up in her eyes.
What if reality is nothing but a disease?
In the distance, the Cadillac explodes as it flies off the bridge and into the river below. Interior, interview room night.
On the first day after Rant, Casey died. An apparent suicide witnessed by thousands of people, millions if you can count the television rebroadcast of his car exploding. The very next day, curfew officer named Daniel Hamish, a 19-year veteran of the curfew patrol, was making his evening sweep when he assaulted a passerby.
Exterior, city streets. Officer Hamish walks down the sidewalk. He sees a stranger passing by, and with no provocation, Hamish jumps at the man, biting his throat. Hamish tears the man's throat out with his teeth.
Responding emergency medical technicians found Hamish delirious and seemingly hallucinating before he lost consciousness and subsequently died.
Interior cone dealer shop night. Todd Rutz stands behind the counter as a few officers come in.
Can I help you?
Ever help a man named Buster Casey?
Yeah, he comes in from time to time.
You might have seen he died in that explosion a few days ago.
Todd nods.
Did he ever exhibit violent tendencies? Did he ever kiss you, bite you?
Well, that's a crazy question.
Interior, interview room night.
In my opinion, there was something a little stagey about Casey's death. First, he was careful to drive the largest, brightest car that night, literally heaping that car with lights, drenching it with gasoline and driving zigzag through the playing field to attract as many attackers as possible. Plus, the newscopters and the way he called the radio station. He kept talking till he burned. Even the way he ran the red lights, smack dab in front of some cops, seems calculated to give him full lights and sirens escort to his next life.
Interior, interview room night.
How does one compensate for the loss of a peer? Looking back, I sometimes wonder if we didn't invent Rant Casey, a group of us. The moment Rant exploded on television, he became a fantastic tale we could recount about our reckless party crashing past. And bathed in the flare of his gasoline limelight, we would appear mythic by association.
Interior, interview room night.
Well, how weird is this? It didn't matter 1,000 people had party crash over the years, getting nothing worse than whiplash. But when we saw the worst that could go wrong, shit, we could die. We could burn alive. The party crashing did start to peter out.
Not to be overly moralistic, but sometimes the death of one person can justify the death of an entire culture.
Exterior, city street, Riverside. The police pull the burnt husk of Rant's car from the river.
Doesn't the government have to make damn sure Rant Casey never turns into our martyr? Haven't oppressed people always gone to church for comfort? Wasn't party crashing our church? The way people came together? If just one leader would emerge, Rant Casey, or anybody, the army of us, ready to fight and die, wouldn't we be invincible?
In actuality, we're mourning 1,000 cars filled with snack food, flirting, and talk therapy. It had been a form of consciousness raising. Every night since that night has become a post-mortem of party crashing, an autopsy, not of Rant Casey, but of a subculture that some night-timer have come to believe would have improved their quality of life.
The burnt car is pulled fully from the water. The windows are still rolled up, fuse closed in the fire. An officer looks in through one of the windows.
Door's still locked. Keys in the ignition.
The car is set down and the police pry open the car door. After a small rush of water, they see the blue embroidered shirt Rant had been wearing, a pair of embroidered pants, and his shoes, but no Buster Casey.
The Bible tells us it will happen in the twinkling of an eye. The rapture. Rant was delivered to heaven. That's what I stopped by and told Chet and Irene. You never saw a couple so heartbroken.
The officer looks at each other, confused.
It was at this point the department issued a warrant for Buster Casey's arrest.
Exterior, Casey residence morning. Sheriff Carlyle steps up onto the Casey's porch and knocks on the door. Irene and Chester open it, and Sheriff Carlyle reads off a small card.
I regret to inform you, but your son, Buster Landrew Casey, was killed in a car accident at approximately 11:43 last night. You have my deepest sympathies. Sorry.
He flips over the card, still reading.
You have my deepest sympathies in your time of grieving.
Tears fill Irene's eyes. Chester just looks at him, not an ounce of sadness in his face.
They find a body yet?
Sheriff Carlyle shrugs and tucks the card back into his hat. Interior, Irene's car, day. Irene drives Chester to the airport.
The morning I drove Chet to the airport to collect my buddy's things, he told me the oddest thing.
Chester adjusts himself in his seat.
Pull down the wallpaper in Buster's room. Steam it soft and tear it down. Stuck to the wall, behind every booger that boy pasted there. Dig into the drywall. If you do, you'll never need for money another day in your life. Just wear rubber gloves before you touch the boogers.
They drive for a few minutes in silence. Then they pull up to the airport. Chester waits for a long moment.
Rain, you've had a difficult time of this life. I'm sorry about everything. I love you, and I always will.
He steps out of the car and looks back at her.
You were a wonderful mother.
And with that, Chester turns and walks into the airport.
I can tell you getting abandoned at the Junction Airport by her husband was not the worst event ever to happen to Irene Casey.
Exterior, Rant's apartment day. The door buzzer rings and Lou Terry sleepily opens the door.
I'm here for Buster's stuff.
Lou looks confused.
I'm his daddy.
Lou lets Chester inside. Interior, Rant's apartment building day. Chester is basically leading the way.
Guy who's never been here, he sure seemed to know his way around.
Before too long, they arrive at Rant's apartment and Chester walks inside. Interior, Rant's apartment day. Chester walks around the apartment, his hand feeling across the wall. A noise comes from the bathroom. Lou turns as Echo walks out. In her good hand, she holds a large black garbage bag. She looks at the two of them.
Who the fuck are you?
Chester grins a big stupid grin and looks towards her.
Echo, it's darn sweet to see you again.
Have we met?
Chester walks over to her and nods to the garbage bag.
What you find worth busting in for?
Frank gave me a key.
Sorry, I reckon I forgot.
Echo looks past Chester to Lou.
You know what a porn buddy is?
Lou shakes his head. No.
If somebody dies, they designate someone to hurry over and search the place for drugs and sex stuff.
She swings the bag over her shoulder and looks at Chester.
Everything you don't want to know about your son is inside here.
Chester turns back to the walls, not even looking at Echo.
2 secondhand skin mags, some Percocet left over from his one visit to the dentist, a stained vibrator, and a pair of handcuffs lined with fake fur.
Echo looked inside the bag.
Last 2 gadgets are yours, but you're welcome to take it all.
How the fuck?
Chester taps one of the booger lumps.
Look here.
Chester pulls out a small jackknife and stabs it gently into the wall.
Just hold on here. The damage deposit won't cover you carving up the walls.
Chester wiggles the blade a little.
The money you stole should cover it.
I did not steal anything from this apartment.
Well, let's ask the coin dealer over on Grinson Street.
Chester pulls the knife out. He digs 2 fingers into the wall and pulls out a gold coin.
Does it look familiar?
Chester pockets the coin. Chester continues around the room, stabbing every spot where there's a black lump.
In your apartment, when you fell asleep the last night you and Buster were together, he pasted lumps of his snot around your walls.
Rant white boogers on my walls.
Everywhere you find a lump, Buster was leaving you some treasure.
I still don't understand.
And don't bother getting tested for rabies. Just start treatments.
Echo looks at him.
You're not really a policeman, are you?
Interior, interview room, night.
Oh boy, oh boy. Rant's dad rolls into the town certifiably, bona fide, batshit crazy. He shacks up with Echo, calls the pest control place to ask for Rant's old job. The first time I meet him.
Exterior, city streets, night. Chester and Echo stand as Shot gets out of his car. Chester smiles. He grabs Shot and gives him a big kiss.
You miss me?
How weird is that shit?
Interior, interview room, day.
Irene was always cutting class. Never did seem to matter how she came into this world without daddy. Irene was full of grand plans.
Interior Middleton High School years ago. A young Irene Casey walks through the school, the world ahead of her.
She talked all the time about college or the army, anything she figured she could deliver out of her town. Sad part is, she never did get past the 9th grade. The summer we were 13, her and Basin, Ruby, and me, we all ran wild, staying out. Then Irene quit coming to the phone. Irene quit, well, everything.
Interior, interview room, day.
Between you, me, and the lamppost, it was no surprise to anybody that Irene was expecting. 3 months along, folks say, before she married Chet.
Exterior, Shelby residence. Years ago, Chester walks up to the porch and knocks. Esther answers.
Can I have a word with Miss Irene Shelby?
No one knew Chester from Adam. He come out of nowhere. No job or family, simply showed up in Middleton, calling everybody by name. Wasn't until the day Esther even knows her girl was pregnant.
Interior, interview room, day. Dr. David Schmidt looks through a medical file. For better or worse, it was Chet's child. The age Irene was, we wanted to be certain she wasn't making another mistake, only looking for some man, any man, to help raise her child. Chester must have been 19 or 20 years old. We ran your standard paternity test, and every genetic marker pointed to the baby being his. In hindsight, every genetic marker pointed at the baby being him. His genes and the child's were so close, the two were indistinguishable. Interior, interview room, day.
My clearest recollection is during our requisite premarital counseling, the couple waived any discussion of intimacy. It was my assumption that their squeamishes arose from Irene being so far along. A lecture on contraception would have been locking the barn door long after that particular horse had run off. Whether or not it was due to the pregnancy, I have never seen a couple less physically infatuated with each other.
Never so much as held hands, but they seemed quite genuine care for each other, right up until Chet climbed into that airplane, never looked back.
Interior, church, day. Irene and Chester are getting married.
You may kiss the bride.
Chester leans in and kisses Irene on the cheek. Interior, interview room, day. Our greatest reservation had been regarding the possibility that Chester Casey had raped 13-year-old Irene Shelby and circumstances were forcing her to marry her assailant. Small towns have a tragic way of trapping young people and making them answer for small mistakes for the rest of their lives. Interior interview room, day.
All the Shelby kin, leastwise the women folk, they were born under a dark star. Irene's own great-great-grandmother had been attacked by a man. Her Grandma Belle Shelby, was assaulted when she was 13 or 14. No sheriff ever caught the man, but Belle Shelby had a baby as the result. And that baby was Irene's grandmother, Hattie. It's as if bad luck stalks after the women in Irene's family.
Interior, interview room, day. Ruby, Elliot, and Basin Carlyle sit in the room together. Don't make me laugh. Don't call what's really loose morals and at any attack. Women in the Shelby family have always run around. No curse settled on the Shelby women, except maybe the curse of promiscuity.
As soon as Hattie Shelby turned 13, it did happen again. Another stranger and another baby. This baby was Irene's own mama, Esther.
Irene Shelby took to sneaking off. Then she got herself knocked up. Then she gone and married Chester. No mystery. It's crazy talk to say a rapist has run down 4 generations of the same family. Don't make me laugh. Interior, interview room, day.
Still, for the life of me, I never did see any child grow up to look so much like his father. Why anybody, meaning Buster and Chester Casey, would swear those two were twin brothers. That is, if they weren't born a generation apart.
Interior, interview room, day. Irene sits there for a long moment, clearly uncomfortable with the question she's been asked.
You're asking, was I raped? Was I attacked by a stranger who might have been my father and my grandfather and my great-grandfather? Bring up such awfulness. I don't know. I forget. I can't remember.
Interior, interview room, night.
I want to ask you, you ever wonder why the dominant culture says certain stuff? I mean, really hammers on you that some stuff is absolutely deadly impossible? For instance, what science calls the grandfather paradox, how it works out that you should never, ever even consider time travel, because you might go back in time and kill your own grandfather by accident. And then, poof, you'd not exist. I mean, if I trusted the government experts, wouldn't you be careful and never go back in time?
Interior, interview room, night.
I was little, but I remember the ICU Act shutting down the rubberneck studies. Those government engineers, like my mother, crashing into each other to study the effect on traffic. I remember her saying who was missing from her office, and I thought she meant fired or laid off. A few more engineers every week. I asked if she'd be leaving, and she told me no, never without her little echo.
Interior, interview room, night.
What if somebody went back and reworked the past, how would the rest of us know? Don't we only know the present reality that we know? What if reality gets shuffled in a little tiny ways all the time? Or what if the people in power have already shuffled the past to get on top, and now they're telling the rest of us not to monkey around with history, or we'll go back and kill our ancient ancestors and every generation after that, and then we'll never get born? I mean, could the people who control all the money in politics ever invent a scary warning? Didn't these same science experts used to say the earth was flat? Wasn't it really important we stay at home and be peasants and slaves? Or we'd fall off the edge?
Interior, church, day. Echo sits with her parents in a funeral service.
This is where they really go.
Not all of them.
Interior, Echo's childhood home, night. Echo's parents argue behind a closed door. Echo only catches bits of what they're saying.
Reverse pioneering.
Interior, interview room, night. Nettie is in full-on conspiracy mode.
I want to ask you, instead of a granddad paradox, I mean, what if there's a grandma paradox? I'm not saying anybody's done this, but what if somebody's gone back and screwed with their own past? No major changes, but just stacked the decks so the present is better. I mean, what if you found yourself a long time ago by accident and you met your own great-great-great-grandmother before it was wrong to date her? And what if she was a babe? And let's say you two hooked up, and how about she has a baby who'd be both your daughter and your great-grandmother? In the wrong sick-minded guy, could you see where this plan might be headed? A hybrid with your superpowers couldn't keep you living. Maybe hooking up with your next ancestor babes, your grandmother and your mom, stoking your own genetics so the future you, even the present you, was more strong, smart, crazy, some extra something, jumping backward in time. Wouldn't you be living alongside history, knowing what the news would be since you've already lived that part? Couldn't you be getting older, hooking up, trying to inseminate another better generation of yourself? Buying lottery tickets and betting on horse races that always pay off? If you lived long enough, couldn't you watch yourself be born? Couldn't you raise yourself? Be your own old man?
Exterior, road, night. Suprema drives down the road.
Get this. The officer at the scene reported that our car never slowed as it crossed the center line. No skid marks proved that my mom hadn't tried to brake.
Interior, car, night. The car swerves directly into an oncoming car. As she collides with the other car, little Echo flies up from the back seat and collides with her parents.
But it's funny. I try to find, to meet and talk to engineers who worked with my parents, but they're all dead. Dead or missing. Killed in car wrecks. Or just vanished.
Interior, interview room, night.
All I'm saying is, what if time is not the fragile butterfly wing that science experts keep saying? What if time is more like a chain link fence you can't hardly fuck up? I mean, even if you fucked it up, even 100 times, how would you ever know? Any present moment, any right now, we get what we get, you know?
Interior, interview room, night.
The Rubberneck study wasn't suspended due to the passage of the ICU Act. The study died because its chief engineers were failing to report for work. If you tally the expense reports and cross-reference them with payroll records and police statements, you'll find a pattern of wrecked government vehicles, and a significant number of engineers driving those vehicles appear to have fled the scene by each accident. They didn't die. They've never been seen again.
Interior, interview room, night.
And by the time you were old, like creaky, fucked up old, and you'd sperm your last version of yourself, wouldn't you get with the latest model? Young you have a little heart to heart. Let's say this finely tuned new hybrid you is 18 or 19 years old.
Interior, interview room, night.
Forget it. Nobody's going to tell you what's the real goal of party crashing. Go ahead. Keep telling yourself we're all just goofing around. A bunch of lame brains who get their jollies by ramming each other with cars. Besides, most of those idiots are operating based off rumors, stories. Nobody's sure how it really works. Nobody's going to tell you what's really going on. But a few of us are going to become gods.
Interior, interview room, night. Nettie leans forward on the table.
All I am saying is, what if it's not Rant's fault? He's the result of somebody's long-time, sick-ass plan. Didn't Rant used to say, the future you have tomorrow won't be the same future you had yesterday? You got all that?
Interior interview room night. Chester sits at the table.
Here comes a load of bullpucky.
Interior car night. Years ago. Green drives through the city.
Night before my boy Buster goes and kills himself, some old coot tells him this long, impossible yarn.
When I was your age and first moved to the city, I was in a car wreck.
A car drives across the center line and slams into him. The world goes dark. Interior hospital room day. Green wakes up in the hospital bed. He looks around the room as nurses walk in.
How long have I been here?
4 days.
What happened to my car?
What car? The police found you unconscious in the street with a broken collarbone and breastbone.
Where are my clothes?
What clothes? The police found you naked.
Everybody knows this is crazy talk, but Buster didn't know that. Buster must have believed the old man.
Interior hospital room the next day. Green sits there with the police.
Can you give us your name and how to best contact your family along with your citizen ID and social security number?
So he tells them. The next day, they come back and tell the guy.
Interior hospital room the next day.
Those names you gave us, they don't exist. And we looked up that number. Look like you don't exist either. So who are you?
Interior hospital room later. A doctor looks over Green's arm, all puckered and covered with scars.
What drugs are you doing?
Green doesn't answer.
Were you aware that you're infected with rabies? Well, at this point, Green sneaks out of the hospital. As soon as they mention a move to the psych ward, he bails before they can even put him behind a locked door.
In exterior hospital day. Green hurries outside, pulling on some stolen clothes. He looks around as he walks, confused.
In just the 4 days he lost, the city suddenly wasn't divided into day or night. Not anymore. No. So Sims hitches a ride to the only place that seems safe.
Green holds out his thumb and starts trying to hitchhike.
He goes back home to his family's house in Middleton. Yeah, the same hometown as Rant.
Breaks your heart the load of lunacy or loony insane lunacy that old Sims coot unloaded on my boy.
Exterior Middleton farmhouse day. Green walks up towards the house. It looks nicely kept, almost new. He tries his key in the lock on the door, but it doesn't work. Green knocks and a young girl answers.
Her name was Hattie. She was pretty the way folks should love her, pretty in old snapshots. She must have seen something pretty in this Sims.
The two talk for a moment before Hattie lets him inside.
She took him inside and almost straight to bed. Well, straight enough.
Interior Hattie's house day.
Of course, this is the man's version. He didn't rape anybody. He didn't guess who she really was until...
Hattie and Green lay in bed, having just had sex.
The only way they'll let you stay is if I get knocked up.
She leans over and kisses Green again. Interior Hattie's house. Moments later, the two are having sex.
I hope it's a girl. I'd name her Esther.
Green comes as he does. He looks over at her nightstand.
That thing right?
You ever take a minute?
No, I mean the calendar.
Interior interview room day.
The old man talking nonsense to my boy. He says he knowed the moment that baby was conceived, felt a surge of energy, smarts, balls, and craziness break over him.
Better than any critter bite, poison, or just plain teeth pain.
He said since he didn't stick around to meet her folks, stay like a stray dog she wanted to keep, that Hattie gal must have told her folks he jumped her.
Interior interview room night.
The way Sims told it to Rant, when he kissed this Hattie person, Sims tasted the meatloaf with onions and sausage she'd eaten in the school cafeteria. Her dinner the night before, a fried calf's liver. The moment their future child was conceived, the man's eyesight and hearing, his sense of smell, and his taste just exploded.
Interior car night. Rant drives with shop.
Rant tells me that Green Taylor Sims had somehow fallen into the past some 60 years after riding in the backseat of his own great-grandmother Hattie Shelby. Sims said he felt great, like some kind of Superman.
It's only one of the secret goals of party crashing. Most people call it a flashback. Others called it
reverse pioneering.
breeding yourself, the way Sims had. We call it stoking.
Exterior, city, various. Green works a few odd jobs.
That supposed 23-year-old refugee stuck in the past, he desperately wishes he'd study more of recent history. At least memorized with some winning lottery tickets.
Green leans over to a coworker.
Has Microsoft gone public yet?
What's a micro?
Microsoft.
The coworkers shake their heads now. Exterior, Shelby house, night. Green stands outside the house looking up at Hattie's window.
Every few years, he returns to spy on his daughter, Esther, his future grandmother. And because he can't invent anything, he says he seduced her, meeting her in secret, giving her money. He tells her the dream for a future dynasty about his accidental fail backwards in time. The car accident.
Whether she believed him or not, if he raped her or not, that girl had a child she named Irene. And the man, now calling himself Green Taylor Sims, disappeared for another 13 years.
According to the elderly man in question, every generation, each of the 13-year-old virgins is willing, even excited to participate in his project, his experiment.
With every sperm that met an egg, Sims claims he felt stronger. He was hoarding more gold, making a fortune, and stashing it for his future self.
Totally balls out crazy.
Geriatric dementia, to say the least.
He just kept fucking with the past, filling the future with the new himself.
Interior car night. Green sits there with Rant.
After telling my boy his crazy story.
Roll up your shirt sleeves.
Rant does, and Green starts pointing to each and every scar.
Badger, coyote, pit viper.
Getting every scar exactly right.
Supposedly, Green Taylor Sims asked Rant to go back in time, to crash in a car accident. People were living longer now. Rant could go back 100 years, see more generations of himself. Rant could memorize lottery numbers and inventions and plans over time, building an even larger fortune.
All the while diddling 13-year-old girls.
And Sims promised some way Rant could love forever, become immortal.
Exterior, Middleton Cemetery day. Young Rant stands with Irene and Chester at Granny Esther's funeral. Green hiding behind a tree on the edge of the land.
Plus, possibly to hide his tracks, or maybe because he's inbred, hybrid crazy, Sims had been sneaking back to murder those Middleton girls in their old age, using poison spiders, bubonic fleas, and killer bees.
Interior, car night. Rant looks at Green.
Memorized. You don't figure what rabies does to a brain.
I know exactly what you're capable of doing. I am you.
Nobody wants to go there. But wasn't the Virgin Mary, wasn't she God's child? And back in biblical times, wasn't she like 13 years old?
Well, 60 years ago, this other Rant Casey got bumped back in time and had to wait his way back to the present. Along the way, making a few changes. Stoking.
Besides, what about the creepy Old Testament stuff about Lot's daughters getting their dad drunk and then preserving his seed?
Interior, interroom night.
Close as I can figure, that wild story is how come Buddy drove his car off that bridge. All that crazy coot's dreams, my boy was supposed to fulfill them. but I wager that's not exactly what my buddy's done.
Interior, interview room, night.
On my last date with Wax, and I mean our final goddamn date, the two of us were cruising a honeymoon night.
Exterior, city streets, night. Waxman and Tina drive in a Maserati until they come across a collection of emergency vehicle lights near the train yards. They slow to rubberneck. All that's left is smoking metal. Even the middle part of the train is scorched. The firefighters are using the jaws of life to cut through the wreckage. They notice a trail of wedding streamers, a white lace veil, and a rosebud boutonniere. Exterior, train yard, an hour ago. The first car is parked at the railroad crossing as a train moves by. A second car crashes into the back of it, pushing it into the tracks and right into the wheels of the train. The first car is pulled under the other car, continues straight and into the train, the debris being dragged 400 feet. Exterior, train yard, present, night. Tina leans out the window, talking to the EMTs.
You wouldn't believe me if I told you.
Tina gives him a look.
We found some chick alive inside the wreck. All her clothes burnt off, but not a scratch on her. Not even a long fingernail busted.
Interior, interview room, night.
The chief argument against the possibility of time travel is what the theorists refer to as the grandfather paradox. This is the idea that if one could travel backward in time, one could kill one's own ancestor, eliminating the possibility said time traveler would ever be born, and thus could never have traveled back and commit the murder. In a world where billions believe their deity conceived a mortal child with a virgin human, it's stunning how little imagination most people display.
Interior, interview room, night.
You want I should risk telling you about historians. You know what happens when a fellow spreads those rumors? What? You can't think up a faster way to get us both killed?
Interior, interview room, night.
Besides reverse pioneering, becoming a historian is the other secret guilty dream of every party crasher.
Interior, interview room, night.
One theory of time travel resolves the grandfather paradox by speculating that at the moment one changes history, that change splinters the single flow of reality into parallel branches. For example, after you've killed your ancestor, reality would fork into two parallel paths. One reality in which you continued to be born and your ancestor did not die, and one branch in which your ancestor died and you would never be conceived. Each revision one made in the past, the subsequent new reality it created, theorists refer to as a bifurcation.
Interior, interview room, night.
Don't you think the biggest, richest fuckers in the world aren't historians? And you really think they want the rest of us to know that? These rich fucks? Don't you think they can't fake their dying every 6 decades or so, then transfer their money and property to their new identity? You think anybody smart is going to tell you about historians? As much as I've already said, what do you think that says about my smarts?
Interior, interview room, night.
A third possibility does exist, although it's never been widely discussed. Aside from bifurcation and time travel via a freed consciousness, this third option also resolves the grandfather paradox and places the traveler in liminal time, suspended outside of the linear movement of time which human beings experience. Simply stated, liminal time has no beginning and no end. Nothing is subject to the natural processes of decay and replacement. In liminal time, nothing is born and nothing dies. Quite understandably, only deities ever existed in this immortality until now. Throughout all mythology, all gods have created themselves as mortals by bearing children by mortal woman. The deity simply emerges from the infinity of liminal time and manifested himself in the form of an angel or a swan or beast, and completes the seduction or announcement that will result in a mortal offspring. The divine made flesh, the infinite made finite. It's when you cross mythology with the grandfather paradox that the reverse occurs and mortal flesh might be made divine.
Exterior, train yard, present. The EMT is still filling Tina in as the others cut away at the car.
This survivor, we thought we heard him sobbing from the wreckage, but when we pried him loose, it was laughter. Hysterical laughter.
Tina looks disconcerted by this. Wax looks fascinated.
If a deity can make himself flesh by conceiving a life with a mortal, Perhaps a mortal can achieve immortality if he's able to travel back in time and destroy both of his parents. In this response to the grandfather paradox, the time traveler eliminates his physical origins, thus transforming himself into a being without physical beginning and therefore without end. Simply put, a god.
Exterior train yard continues. The EMTs are covering away at the car, hearing the laughter inside. The woman, only about 25, sits naked amidst the wreck.
Ma'am, can you tell me how old you are?
163 next month. That was way fun. Now get this burnt shit off of me.
Exterior train yard, present night. Tina and Wax look as they pull the woman from the car and cover her with a blanket. That's where I want to get. Tina gives him a look. Interior, interview room day.
In a somewhat hideous parody of the Annunciation, the time traveler would make a pilgrimage to a direct ancestor, ideally that traveler's mother or father, at a time before the traveler's conception, for the purpose of killing that ancestor.
Interior, interview room night.
Again, do not confuse stoking with resolving origin. Stoking means you flash back to breed a better you. Resolving origin means you slaughter some ancestor to make sure you'll never be born. I'll grant you, they're both pretty nasty.
Interior, interview room night.
Historians don't. They call it destroying source or severing origin. Haven't you heard it called resolving origin? Doesn't it make sense that serial killers like Zodiac and Jack the Ripper, those were people dropped back into time and having trouble finding and resolving their mothers?
Interior, interview room night.
I never hear from Wax. Not until a long, long time after Rant Casey takes a suicide dive off the bridge. In the meanwhile, police keeps asking me if Wax had been in touch. It seems some kids died rolling out a Jaguar X-Type. The car turned out to be stolen, and Wax's wallet was in the back pocket of some jeans left behind in the wreck. As if Wax totaled a Jag, killing 2 kids and leaving his goddamn pants behind. A couple weeks later, they called again. Seems another kid died in a stolen car, this time a BMW 3 Series. Seems a witness swear that the second after the car sailed off the top of the 8-story parking garage, crashing into the pavement, that disaster Karl Waxman climbed out from behind the shattered windshield and walked away. And again, I told the cops I hadn't heard a word. They matched Wax's fingerprints on the steering wheel to his apartment. The cops asked, was I harboring him?
Interior, Tina something's apartment. Night. Tina looks through the phone book for Waxman,
If I can't find you, I'll find your mom.
but she sees nothing for Waxman.
Maybe maiden name?
She flips back to Elric. She finds a number and dials. After a few rings, someone answers, then hangs up. Interior, old man's apartment, hallway, night. Tina stomps up to the door and knocks.
Go away.
Tina keeps knocking.
I know Gloria and Wax are around. I only want to talk.
Go away.
I'll call the police.
Door unlocks. An old man stands behind the chained door.
Go away or I'll call the police myself. My daughter Gloria died almost 20-some years back.
Tina looks shocked. Exterior, makeup home, 20-something years back. Gloria sits in a car with her boyfriend. A shadowy figure walks up to the car, pulls out a gun, and opens fire, killing both of them. Interior, old man's apartment, hallway, night. The old man slams the door in her face.
What was the boyfriend's name?
Go away.
Just tell me his name.
Anthony, look, Tony Waxman. Now you go.
Interior, interview room, night.
However, once one had made the journey and completed the task to become immortal, to live eternally in a world where everything and everyone would wither and die, while you accumulated knowledge and wealth, becoming the most powerful leader of all time, for all time, that seems well worth the effort.
You don't think a historian would kill you just for laughs?
Interior, interview room, night.
The last time I seen Wax.
Exterior, city street corner, night. Tina stands on the curb wearing a bridesmaid dress, trying to thumb down a team. A Rolls-Royce silver cloud pulls up next to her and the window rolls down. Behind the wheel sits Waxman. Hey, baby. Get in.
Where you been?
I did it.
Did what?
Next, after historians terminate origins, don't they go through a long process called something residual fading?
I got no more future or past. I never have to eat another bite of food or sleep another wink. No more haircuts, no more shits, no aging or illness, no death. I'm outside of time. I'm without beginning to end, and I can make you a goddess.
Like you made that burned up kid in the BMW a god? And the kids in the Land Rover?
I was just goofing with them. Once you're immortal, you forget that other people aren't. And you start screwing around and somebody gets their head cut off. But with you, it will be different.
Like you made your mom and dad immortal?
Wax opens the shotgun door. Just get in, baby. You won't be young forever unless you trust me. Tina slams the door shut.
You're a dirtbag for not calling me. Now it's your turn to wait.
Oh, I can wait. A group of kids looking to crash bustle out onto the street and run to the window.
You need a team?
Tina steps in between them and the car.
Don't. You get in this car, and this goddamn psycho will murder you.
They look at her like she's nuts, then get in the car. Wax looks back at her and winks. Try not to forget me, baby. He blows her a kiss and peels off.
Couldn't you guess that old-time gods and saviors like Apollo and Isis and Shiva and Jesus are just losers with beater Torinos and Mustangs who went party crashing and found a way to sever their origins? Maybe they all started a real nobodies, but as their reality faded, a new story piled up around them.
Interior, Tina's apartment, night. Tina walks inside and picks up the phone.
Detective Mills? I just saw Karl Waxman.
Who?
Karl Waxman. You came to talk to me about him a dozen times in the last month.
Never heard of him.
Interior, interview room, night.
In every goddamn photo I have of me and Wax, he's gone. Just disappeared. There are only photos of me smiling with my arm looped around him, nothing, my lips puckered, kissing air. When I try, I can't even tell you if his eyes were brown or green. Ask me again in a few months, and $100 says I've never, ever heard of Karl Waxman.
Interior, interview room, night.
The way Rant told it to me, Sims didn't want him to go back in time and fuck anybody. Now that Sims was his own super hybrid, he wanted to be immortal. Sims wanted Rant to go back in time and kill his mom. I guess their mom.
In Middleton, sleeping dogs have the permanent right of way, both metaphorically and literally. Exterior, Middleton night. Echo sits in a car with Shot and Nettie.
So we went back to Middleton to see the Middleton Church Fellowship, the Sex Tornado, and we were lucky. The Tooth Museum and the Wild Dogs.
Didn't we go to Middleton to see if Irene Casey was dead? Wasn't our real reason to see if Rant had fulfilled the mission Sims sent him to do?
Exterior, Casey resident night. They sit a ways away from the house, watching the outline of Irene moving in the kitchen window. Shot and Nettie start dozing off. Then so does Echo. Interior, Casey residence continues. Irene sits at the table working on her embroidery. I hesitate to even comment further on this pathetic person, this Rant Casey. It's regrettable that I ever discussed with him my theories about liminal time. Beyond that, he suffered hallucinations brought about by a terrible chronic disease and died a horrible death in the deluded belief that it would be his salvation. Even as we depict him as a victim and a fool, our attention and energy create Casey as a martyr. Irene stitches furiously, trying to think of happier times, but failing. Interior Shelby residence flashback. It's a Christmas party and the house is packed. All of Irene's aunts and uncles fill the house. Irene, about 13, wearing a hand-knit sweater. The sweater is covered with satin stitched down the front with pink roses and violet periwinkle blossoms. To date, 14 troubled people have driven their automobiles into obstacles and over precipices, dying in apparent imitation of Rant Casey. On a personal note, I deeply resent Mr. Casey casting me as a serial rapist and murderer. Erin sneaks out the back door, running through the backyard with no one inside noticing. Exterior, Middleton River, day. Erin makes her way down to the frozen surface of the river. She takes a deep, calming inhale and watches her breath drift away like a cloud into the cold.
Green Sims would tell you that Rant was insane. He was very much part of the elite, and he doesn't want to be threatened by any new order.
Erin sees something shiny reflecting from under the frozen water. She toe kicks at it and sees it's a coin. She pulls up her sweater sleeve and reaches for it, holding her hair out of her face with the other. Thus stops for a moment, hearing wild dogs barking in the distance. She reaches down and pulls the coin out of the dirty frost. She bites it with just her teeth, testing to see if it's candy. But it's not. It's real. Hello. Erin looks upstream and sees Green in front of her. He looks about 25.
Well, don't you look nice?
Green walks over and grabs one of the loops in her sweater sleeve.
Isn't this pretty?
Erin holds her hand tight around the coin.
There's wild dogs, mister.
Relax.
Don't, mister. Quit pulling, please.
He stretches the sleeve towards him.
Not hurting you.
Her feet start to slide on the ice beneath her feet.
You're going to ruin it.
He's gotten his fingers wrapped into the yarn of her sleeve like a net. He pulls her in close.
Ever wonder about your real daddy? I've been watching your trash.
He pushes her into the dirt and climbs on top of her. Interior, Casey residence, night, present. Erin stitches away, adding more floral flourishes to the skirt.
Don't historians call it oblivion? The place without place where time stopped? The place outside of time?
Interior, Echo's apartment, night. Echo looks at a plain white Easter egg. She drops it into a cup of coffee. Exterior, Middleton River, flashback. The dog park in the distance.
Didn't happen. Not yet. To be safe, we'll need to go again.
Interior, Echo's apartment, night. Echo finishes drinking her coffee and sees the egg in the bottom of the cup. She pulls it out, and across the brown surface are white words drawn in wax. In 3 days, I'll return from the dead.
Some kind of Easter quote.
Exterior, Middleton River flashback later. Green stands and starts buttoning his pants.
Well, just like your mama and grandma and great-grandma smelled at your age.
He looks down at her, her sweater stuck in to the icy ground.
Have this baby, you'll be the most famous mother in all of history. Don't have this baby, I'll come back to make you have another.
He tucks his shirt back into his pants.
You must know the hidden message written on my egg was fuck you.
Erin struggles to pull herself from the ice.
I don't know why, but my egg said Green Taylor Sims.
Green looks down at her.
Bleeding.
Erin looks at her hand and sees a trickle of blood dripping from her clenched fist. Green bends down and pries her fingers open. The coin has cut a small circle into her palm.
Weeks into the new year, I'd have a purple bruise dated 1884.
Sims looks down at the coin.
Pay for cleaning your sweater.
He stands and straightens out his shirt.
Stay until I'm gone.
Green walks off all the way into the far-off horizon.
No, the real liars are Echo Lawrence and Shot Dunyan because they know the truth but won't tell. You can flash back in time and tinker with events, and every night they still try. All I know is this: people do this, and they don't want you to.
Erin finally looks away from the direction he left. She struggles to pull herself from the ice. She can barely hear someone's feet crunching through the snow towards her.
It's Casey? Irene? Mom?
Chet, young enough to still be Buster, completely naked except for a blue hospital gown, steps out, shaking cold.
Couldn't catch a ride.
His teeth chatter as he sees her.
I'm too late. Am I too late?
Interior interview room night.
Hospital ID bracelet that Chester wore that day. It's dated from the day they pulled him out of the river. 19 years to the day before Rant put his car into the same stretch of water. I still have the bracelet. Chet gave it to me. The day Rant disappeared into the river and the day Chet washed up. Both days, December 21st.
Exterior Middleton River flashback. Chester crouches down to her and help her as best as he can while shivering.
It's gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay.
Irene's eyes trail over the scars all over Chester's arms.
Icky as it sounds, didn't Rant marry his mom? Didn't he change his name to Chester Casey and stick around to raise the kid, to help raise himself?
Chester looks into Irene's eyes.
Don't move. You're hurt. Don't ever try to hitchhike dressed this way.
Isn't that like the Trinity? Rant and Chester and old green Taylor Sims like in Catholic Church, 3 people being the same, but divided?
I'm sorry about this.
Irene finally feels the ice release the fibers of the sweater and she unbuns it, handing it to the naked Chester.
Take it. You'll catch your death.
Doesn't that explain why Chet Casey wasn't more broken up about his kid being dead? Why Chet just moved in and set up house? Aren't we talking about being backward loops in time?
Loops, like embroidery stitches.
Exterior Middleton Woods flashback. Irene and Chester walk through the snow back towards her house.
Who exactly are you?
You don't want to know.
And that's how Chet came into my life. I didn't know for sure, not until my next period. Never come, but that's how Buddy come to life too.
Interior interview room night.
How impossible is that? Rant Casey isn't dead. He's become Chester, the dad. When Rand's car caught fire and Christmas treed off the side of the Barlow Avenue viaduct, he flashed back in time, but not to kill Irene, as Sims had planned. Rand only went back to stop the attack on Irene. It's beyond impossible.
Exterior Casey residence night. Present. The front door opens and Irene stands in the doorway.
Bitch.
Irene's shouts are enough to wake Echo, Shot, and Nettie. They see a figure step out from behind a tree towards Irene.
Ms. Casey?
Bodie? Bodie Carlyle? Get in here. You're going to catch your death.
You see, life only turns out good or bad for only a little bit. And then it turns out some other way.
Bodie steps inside and the porch lights turn off.
And this is the point where that bogus Sheriff Carlyle arrested us.
Police lights flash behind Echo's car and they all look back, seeing the sheriff cruiser sitting behind them. Interior interview room day.
The phenomenon commonly known as party crashing is simply the latest manifestation of a liminal space which provides a cathartic sublimation, generating a normative communitas, thereby deflecting any pent-up hostility toward the status quo and preserving the existent social structure.
Interior interview room day.
Now, Rant Casey and Karl Waxman represent the latest incarnation of this ancient model. Both men degraded by violent public death are rumors to be alive, and not simply alive, but immortal. Waxman is said to have traveled backwards in time and murdered his parents before the moment of his conception, preserving himself in a permanent liminal state. Casey, well, Rant Casey is another story. His is a redemption through public recognition and emotional attachment, a mass refusal to accept that he died in a well-documented automobile accident.
Interior interview room night.
All that anthropology 401 garbage is beyond boring. Party crashing is just a fun time. It's a fun playtime. Please don't kill it with big words.
Interior interview room day.
I remember everyone was saying Rant Casey was the father of the party crashing and he wasn't dead. These same kids will tell you that Elvis and Jim Morrison and James Dean just got sick of the spotlight and faked their death so they can write the poetry in the south of France. When everyone lies about seeing Rant and kissing him, all their lies prop up with a win-win reality. The government says Rant is alive because they need a villain. The kids say he's alive because they need a hero.
Interior interview room night.
Once he died, or at least disappeared, Rant Casey became a very effective boogeyman for our government. Anytime the federal government needed to distract public attention away from its own incompetence, the Surgeon General simply announced a new development in the rabies epidemic, or the hunt for Rant, or both.
Exterior gas station night.
The last time I saw Green Taylor Sims, we were driving a mattress night.
Green stands filling the tank wearing a pinstripe suit. Echo stands across from him.
So Chester Casey's come to town.
Tell me, how is delusional is the elder Mr. Casey?
So I told him everything Chester told me.
It helps. Chet Casey told me to start sample picture time like a river than a book. Then picture time travel is nothing more than knocking your half-read book on the floor and losing your place. Pick up the book and open the pages to a scene too early or late, but never exactly where you've been reading.
Green doesn't say a word for a long moment. He reaches inside and pushes in his cigarette lighter.
Listening.
Rand said once you perceive time the way people in power want you to, like it's a speed limit on some freeway. But speed limits change. Santa Claus is fake. Time wraps, it loops, it stops and starts. And that's just a little bit he'd found out. Rand says that view of time was set up so folks won't live forever. It's the planned obsolescence we've all agreed to. Everybody except the folks who won't die. Historians.
Nothing says you have to swallow this. You can always just die.
The cigarette lighter pops with a little click. A beat later, the gas pump clicks off too. Green pulls out his wallet.
According to Chet Casey, we met Rant because you recognized him on that street corner.
Green pinches $50 out of his wallet.
Pull up your sleeve. Let me see your arm.
Who do you think invented this little game you enjoy so much? Who do you think decides the field and flag and window that sends the word out? What do you suppose would happen to party crashing without me?
He hands Echo the money and she takes it.
So kind as to buy me some red vine licorice.
Echo walks inside. Exterior gas station minutes later. Echo comes outside and Green is gone.
I'm Tina Something with the Graphic Traffic Emergency Bulletin. It looks like another repeat redundant case of deja vu. 3 police vehicles are in a high-speed pursuit of a burning car westbound on the Madison Beltway. The fire seems limited to a burning mattress towed to the car's roof.
Echo turns the other way and walks off. In the distance, there's a bright flash of an explosion.
All westbound lanes of the Madison Beltway are closed due to the crash of a burning car. Emergency crews are trying to control the fire.
Consider that Rant Casey is Christopher Columbus, or is the Christopher Columbus of time travel.
The accident that's been moved off the roadway, but the boys in the meat wagon are still waiting for their cargo. According to the early rumors, the burned Daimler Benz appears to be empty. Bringing you the gory details, this is DRVR Graphic Traffic.
Interior interview room night.
Doesn't everybody know
people still party crash to attain the road trip trance where you come up with ideas. Or maybe people get off on the chase. You know, to meet people and spend time together.
Interior interview room day.
You know, if Echo jumps back in time, she'd be around today. But with both regular arms and legs, normal, and with living, alive parents, Echo would be the same age as Rand or Chester or whatever he calls himself now. They'd be just two regular, boring, middle-aged people.
Interior interview room night.
If Nettie manages to go back, there will be no more infrastructure, effective use act, no curfews, one colossal traffic jam, the way the world used to be. But if Rant ever gets it right, if he ever gets back in time to save his mother from becoming his mother, chances are you'll never have heard the name Rant Casey. He and Green might both be historians without beginning or end.
Interior interview room day.
How weird is that? Instead of testimony, the whole thing becomes just a story, a factual historical artifact documenting a past that never happened. Like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, another obsolete truth.
Interior interview room night.
Ask yourself, what did I eat for breakfast today? What did I eat for dinner last night? You see how fast reality fades away?
Interior interview room night.
Why would I change? The next party crash night, anytime any goddamn Maserati or Rolls Royce pulls up to the curb, I'm climbing inside. The rest of you goddamn losers, enjoy your death.
Fade to black. Title comes across the screen. Wallace Bohr is available to lecture extensively about his short-lived in-flight relationship with Rant Casey. Sheriff Bacon Carlyle faces charges of wrongful arrest stemming from allegedly harassing visitors to the Middleton Tooth Museum. Bodie Carlyle operates and curates the newly opened Middleton Tooth Museum. Chester Casey disappeared in connection with a single vehicle accident after the disappearance of Green Taylor Sims. Irene Casey is now a wealthy philanthropist and chief financial backer and docent of the Middleton Tooth Museum. Blayne Coffey authored the nonfiction account Nail and Bail, A History of Party Crashing. Shot Dunyan has been missing since the vehicle he was driving left the roadway and fell from the edge of a 300-foot cliff. Jarrell Moore remains isolated in government infectious disease quarantine for an indefinite period. Nettie Nelson was last seen riding as a passenger in the car in which Chester Casey disappeared. Green Taylor Sims continues to be a person of interest sought by police in connection with the disappearance of Buster L. Casey. Tita Something was last seen entering a Dodge Viper, which later crashed against the side of a freight train. Emergency responders found no one, alive or dead, at the scene. Toni Weedlin continues to participate in party crash events, but denies all rumors that she's assumed the role of game organizer. Echo Lawrence has not been heard from since her testimony was taken. Fade to black.
And that was the sorry, I was seeing a few of the random thumbnail. Yeah, that was the very long and very confusing Rant, the tale of Buster Casey. Thank you all so very much for watching if you stuck around for this whole thing. And well, we'll see you at the next one.